This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the City of Warrenville Public Works and Infrastructure Committee of the Whole regular meeting. It is Monday, February 8th. In accordance with Governor Pritzker's disaster proclamation, Section 7E of the Illinois Open Meetings Act, 5 ILCS 120/7, parens E, and a determination by the mayor of the City of Warrenville, this meeting will be held virtually. Any person wishing to provide public comments are strongly encouraged to submit written comments via email at info@warrenville.il.us by 5 p.m. of the day of the meeting. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Brumel?
Here.
Alderman Anderson?
Here.
Alderman Ashour? Alderman Berry?
Here.
Alderman Davalos?
Here.
Alderman Goodman?
Here.
Alderman Chrisel?
Here.
Alderman Widener?
Here.
Alderman Wilson?
Here.
You have a quorum. Staff? Administrator Coakley?
Here.
Assistant City Administrator White?
Here.
Public Works Director Kukler?
Here.
Management Analyst Youngmeyer?
Here.
And Deputy City Clerk Bravetti? Here.
Okay. Thank you. Now for the Pledge of Allegiance, if you would please say it silently to yourself. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now on to citizens' comments. We will begin with anyone present at City Hall wishing to make a comment. As of right now, we have one person who is here in the audience who would like to speak, and that would be Mr. Bob Seibert. I'll give it back to you.
Bob Seibert, Albright Court. I received 3 certified registered mail. The only problem was on the back, the green card that you sign was not on the back of any of these certified registered letters. I have 4 parcels down on Ferry Road. This is 3. I asked the one renter if she had heard anything or signed anything. She said no. And just for the record, the property tax bills do not go to the addresses on Ferry Road. In this document was an announcement for a public hearing on February 4th at City Hall last Thursday. And the statement on this document stated that the public hearing will either be held at Warrenville Municipal City Hall, located at 28W 701 Stafford, or will be held audio or virtual. The number of people permitted at City Hall for the hearing will be limited. Space will be available on a first come, first served basis. If the public hearing is held virtually, members of the public that do not wish to view the virtual meeting from another area may view the virtual meeting at City Hall with limited space available. note of public comment. If the meeting is conducted by audio or video conference, verbal live commenting will be available at City Hall. The only problem was when two of us arrived at City Hall was locked. We tried the 3 doors twice, they were locked. There was no available way to get in. We did see that Tim Cosgrove's truck was outside, but we were unable to enter. I have a concern that a public hearing is not a valid meeting if the public is not allowed to come to the meeting. I believe that when the public is not allowed to enter and become part of the meeting for which certified letters were sent out, the meeting is invalid. For that reason, on Friday morning at 10:15, I called City Hall, asked to speak with John Coakley. They said he was busy, so I left a message that I was concerned about the public hearing. On 2 cases that I believe it was not a valid meeting due to the certified mail, my name was never attached, but the documents were taken apart. Secondly, it is my position, which today Natalia called me at about 9:15 and said, well, you can speak on March 17th to continue the meeting. I said, well, that was not my concern. My concern is the fact that we were here to visually see and view the meeting, which did not occur. Therefore, it is my position that this meeting should be rescheduled, documents sent to the people who live within the area, the individuals who, according to the certified letter, they're looking for our input on what we believe and are concerned about this development. However, we were not given that choice. We were not given the availability of what was sent in the mail. But for those reasons, I believe for the public, which is the most important and really the only reason that the city council exists, is to support, protect, and inform the citizens.
Thank you. Okay, have anyone else at the city who would like to make a comment? Seeing no one else. We will now hear any verbal comments from the public participating by phone. Anyone from the public wishing to speak, please announce yourself with your name and address. Speak slowly and clearly so we can capture your information. Once we have everyone wishing to speak, I will call on you one by one to proceed with your comments. Is there anyone on the phone who would like to make a comment at this time? Okay, hearing no one. Any email comments will be read aloud. And as far as I know, there were no email comments sent in for this meeting. Before concluding public comment, once we conclude the citizens' comments, there will not be another opportunity for the public to comment this evening. Thank you. Now on to official staff and officials and staff comments. Mayor Brummel?
Thank you. I have nothing to add at this time.
Okay. Alderman Clerk? Clerk Larson? You want to unmute her?
I'm unmuted. Nothing at this time, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Treasurer is not here this evening. And now on to the Alderman, Alderman Anderson.
No comments this evening.
Okay. Alderman Ashour. Alderman Ashour is absent this evening. For myself, I just want to express my condolences to the family of Ray Scott. Ray Scott was a city employee. He was a crossing guard. I don't remember exactly which school he was a crossing guard at, but he did that for many years. And the kids loved him, and he loved his job. And he will be missed greatly. So condolences and prayers for his family at this time. Alderman Davalos.
Yes, nothing tonight. Thank you.
Alderman Goodman.
Two quick things. First of all, it's not too late to sign up to participate in any of the Fermilab open house, which will be virtual and starts in 2 days. It's going to go from the 10th to the 14th. There's all sorts of exciting events. International Women in Science, seeing Mr. Freeze do his cryotechnics. I don't know. That's probably not the right word. The tours that will be conducted virtually of Fermilab's many experiments, Ask a Scientist events. You can find out a lot more on Fermilab's website, fnal.gov. And there will be all day and all evening events through the 15th, I believe, through the 14th. So starting on Wednesday. The second thing is that tonight we're beginning our budget presentations. So we're going to hear from the administration department and the public works department today. But as we move forward with this, I want to thank staff, particularly our finance director, Kevin Dahlstrom, because this has been such a difficult budget year. I think we are all aware of the many challenges that are facing the city this year, both in predicting what our revenues are going to be and also in trying to make the best of a bad situation during this pandemic. I know we'll probably have a lot of questions for staff about all of their budget requests and priorities and accomplishments and goals, but I just want to say going into this whole process that we know that the staff puts a lot of work into this. They do every year, and we know that this has been a particularly difficult year to deal with this, and we appreciate their hard work.
Thank you. Alderman Krischel.
Thank you. No comments tonight.
Thank you. Alderman Widener.
Thank you. I have a warm thought for this snowy evening. The bike rodeo is May 15th. I'm predicting short sleeves will be worn. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very encouraging. Alderman Wilson.
No comments.
Okay. Thank you. City Administrator Coakley.
Thank you. Two quick things. As was raised during citizen comments, there were some issues and questions about last Thursday's public hearing for the Plan Commission on February 4th. Our staff is following up. I know that our senior planner, Doma Vasova, did speak to both gentlemen who did not get access to the building that night, and she and Community and Economic Development Director Menser are working with the city attorney to figure out what the right information is to do, what the right action is to do, I should say, because it was a public hearing, to make sure that everything is right. And they did relay the information also about the mailing that did not, that was relayed to them this morning or today when Natalia spoke to Mr. Seibert. So that has also been relayed to the attorney. So we will be getting answers on that. Second thing is just as some discussion at the beginning of the meeting, there was reference just to a letter to the editor of the Daily Herald. So I quickly looked it up and I emailed the link to all of you. It took a few minutes to go because our connection seems to be poor, but anyone's interested in that. It's about Winchester parking, and just informational. It's not on the agenda tonight, but just an FYI. Thank you.
Thank you. Now on to the business of the meeting. First up, we have the Administration Department with the FY 2022 budget presentation, and that will be conducted by Assistant City Administrator White.
Thank you. Give me a second as I get the presentation loaded here. Okay, so as Alderman Goodman pointed out, we are kicking off our budget presentations by department. Before I jump into administration, I did just want to point out, since mine is the first of the department presentations, that these are department overview, including projects that we anticipate working on in the coming year. There will be additional opportunities to discuss the projects and priorities at greater length during the budget workshop as we review the citywide fiscal condition at that point in time. So for those watching at home, administration is a 4-person department with a variety of tasks in support of the public, the mayor and city council, and other city departments. It includes the functions of human resources, risk management, information technology, records for the city, communication, and other special projects. The administration department is also where the city administrator's office is located, and he has general oversight of the city as a whole in all operations. Tonight's budget overview is going to be broken up into 2 sections, operations and core services, and then special projects. We'll review accomplishments for the current fiscal year that's wrapping up, fiscal year 21, as well as the upcoming fiscal year 22 operations and projects. So to start off with fiscal year 21 accomplishments, COVID-19 response, which seems like an odd thing to list as an accomplishment since we're still in the middle of the pandemic, and it certainly isn't something anyone anticipated, but it is something that took up a lot of time and resources in fiscal year 21 to address the various impacts of COVID-19 on city operations. The administration department generally took the lead on some of the operation changes while maintaining core services, addressing the financial implications along with the finance department and finance director to reduce expenses, implement policies and procedures to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 across the city, including limiting city business hours, installing dividers at the public counters, suspending non-essential in-person meetings, purchasing additional supplies and equipment, and increasing the cleaning frequency throughout the city over the first few months of the pandemic. We anticipate this will continue as COVID-19 is certainly not over yet. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into fiscal year 22. In addition to that, the city administration department always also supports economic development activities through the economic development representatives. We did continue to see economic development continue through COVID-19 in fiscal year 21. Construction carried on, seemingly unaffected as some of the other industries were. And then we continued to provide information through the website, Channel 10, Facebook, YouTube, the Hometown Happenings newsletter, and the city signboard. We continue to see a steady growth in Facebook followers, and as well as the public watching the YouTube videos and the replays of the meetings. So I think that's also a good source of information. When we talk about COVID-19, we've had some updates throughout the year on the city's Facebook page and website. And we do still have a website page dedicated to COVID-19 at warrenville.il.us with updates and information. The city's operations also include information technology, as mentioned. This year, with the support of the city's IT consultants, we continued our replacement program on desktop computers and continue to improve the network for security reasons and just to stay up to date with all of the changes in technology and software security. We did have to purchase additional portable devices, including laptops, to accommodate remote work schedules when we were dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic and had city offices closed and a lot of employees working off-site. We continued to fill a variety of open positions and recruited for other positions. That's something that pretty much continues year to year as positions become available through retirements and as individuals look for other opportunities. While we don't collect demographic data on applicants or employees, the empirical evidence does show the city has a more diverse slate of employees today than we had previously, and we continue to focus our efforts on attracting a more diverse pool of candidates. In fiscal year 21, we also continued our safety policy updates that will continue in 22 as well, and implemented a variety of temporary policies to address COVID-19. And we began collective bargaining with 2 of the 3 city union groups. Much of those meetings were delayed, and the process was delayed due to the fiscal uncertainty related to COVID. So we anticipate that continuing as well. The enterprise resource planning implementation, which I'm sure everyone remembers was a big project for administration and finance, as well as some of the other departments. We continue to work through that in fiscal year 21. We have gone live now essentially with human resources, budgeting, and intend to go live with payroll, accounts receivable, and the projects and grants portion, as well as the permits and outward facing portal by the end of the fiscal year, with some wrap up work at the beginning of next fiscal year. The city started a new commission, a new advisory commission called the Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Awareness Commission, IDEC for short. They'll begin meeting for the first time this week to assist the city in evaluating opportunities to improve diversity and inclusion and equity initiatives, as well as enhance communication and outreach in the community. That began with a task force that was started in the fall, and they helped us work through how to get a commission started. So we're excited to have a bunch of volunteers that have agreed to participate on that new commission and work with us on those initiatives, as well as some of the other taxing districts that will be serving as ex officio members. Oh, sorry about that. Thank you. The other item on this list is the citywide residential garbage and recycling program, which is included in tonight's agenda for discussion. We'll talk about the proposals in a little bit, but our current contract with our waste collector is expiring at the end of April. So we will be working the rest of the months of this year towards implementation of with a new hauler and potentially a new program. So looking forward to fiscal year 22, again, we will continue our collective bargaining with our 3 city unions. The contracts expired at the end of April of 2020. So that negotiation process with Metropolitan Alliance of Police and the IBEW will go on through, most likely through the rest of this fiscal year. We will continue to look at policies and training priorities, as well as pass additional safety policies for council review. Recruiting and hiring will likely continue as, again, people retire and individuals leave for different opportunities. And we'll be looking at the impact of legislative mandates. So a couple of years ago, the state of Illinois approved a minimum wage increase to $15 by 2025. That will likely have an impact on employers, including the city. So we continue to evaluate what that looks like for predominantly our part-time employees, but there will likely be an impact across the board. We also are anticipating additional legislative updates, both at the state and federal level. So staff will continue to review the impacts of those and present information to the council as additional information becomes available. We will continue looking at our IT infrastructure. That's going to always be a significant priority because so much of what we do in our work today relies on internet and email access, and especially now with COVID and folks remote working, that is going to continue to be a priority. We'll likely include repairing and replacing equipment that fails, as well as upgrading some other equipment. There is a decision package included in the budget for network upgrades, which we'll talk about a little bit more as we get into the special projects. Again, we talked about the IDEC commission. Staff will continue to support that new commission through the year with me being the staff liaison to that group. And then we also provide support to the other volunteer boards and commissions of the city, including the Friends of the Fourth, Summer Days, the Holly Days event, Warrenville and Bloom, and provide additional guidance to the staff liaisons that are assigned to the various boards and commissions. As I mentioned, we'll wrap up the ERP work this year, and there will likely be some spillover into fiscal year 22 as we evaluate changes to the operations due to the new ERP software. We will likely have some policy and procedure changes to be made once we get a better understanding of the new processes. There will likely be some census follow-up. We think we're going to be receiving the census results in early 22. And there may be some work to change the ward boundaries based on population data that will help support some activity potentially on the Citgo property that may occur in fiscal year 22. And that's again supporting the efforts of the Community Development Department. And we anticipate COVID-19 to continue, so we'll continue to evaluate and address the impacts of that pandemic on employees, the public, businesses, and of course the economic impact on the city's finances. The security information and event monitoring project, we talked about this a little bit last year. We had to delay it for a variety of reasons, including budgetary restraints. But the police department is required to follow the FBI's Criminal Justice Information Services security policies. One of the main focuses of that is securing information and evidence. This software application provides means for staff to do that. So we will likely implement that project in early fiscal year 22. We'll continue to upgrade and replace our computers across the city and other software applications. The city is looking at doing cellular network changes. We are currently with a provider that has been purchased by another company in recent months. And so some of the devices have been giving us trouble and some of the service. We've had some service issues, so we'll be looking to evaluate a different network, which we're working on now in hopes of implementing a new cell network in early 22. And then the electric aggregation program alternative that we talked about last year, the change to the plan of operation and governance, which requires some public hearings that will likely occur in the late part of fiscal year 21 and early part of fiscal year 22 in time to review a new supply contract before the expiration of the current one in October. As I mentioned, we would talk about network upgrades. There is a decision package included in the fiscal year 22 budget for upgrading to the city servers and Office 365 software. Because we're still reviewing revenues, we will determine at the budget meeting in March, the budget workshop, if that project is going to continue as it's currently planned or if some changes will need to be made. We'll have a better idea once we have a better grasp on the citywide finances. Some of the projects that are not included in the fiscal year 22 list of admin projects under the work plan are the AV upgrades. There is some money budgeted for repairs and replacements if there's breakdown of equipment. But at one point we had talked about a bigger project to review and evaluate the potential of changing the AV system altogether and looking at the room as a whole. That is not something staff thinks we'll be able to undertake in fiscal year 22 for both time resource reasons and financial resource reasons. Facilities and space needs we talked about after the services and staffing study was completed, looking at facilities and space needs at the 3 city buildings. Again, that's not something we think we're going to be able to undertake in fiscal year 22, so that project was removed from the work plan. And the communications coordinator position, which was included last year in the budget and delayed a year at the budget workshop, City Council asked staff to put that back in for fiscal year 22 as a decision package, so we did, but staff is not recommending it at this time. And that is all I have, so any questions I can answer.
Okay, this is information only, obviously, and but we will go through the list for questions and discussion. Mayor Brummel?
Thank you. No questions, just a thank you to the administration department for an outstanding effort during a very, very difficult time, trying to shuffle all of the things that need to be done and prioritize to make sure the important things actually get done and those that can be postponed are postponed, dealing with a constantly changing menu of fires that have to be put out. Again, an outstanding job, and I really appreciate your dedication and hard work over the last few months to keep us on track. So that's my addition to the discussion is a thank you to staff for a job well done.
Thank you. Alderman Anderson?
No questions, just one comment. I'll be interested to follow the thinking around the ERP implementation and what the implications are going to be on a kind of a go forward maintenance standpoint. You know, it's a complicated project that I know there's more to do, but I assume there's going to be a decent amount of ongoing care and feeding of that platform that I'll be interested to see, you know, make sure we have enough resources aligned to support that project once it's live.
Thank you. Alderman Davalos?
Yes, no, I just have one clarifying question. I'm trying to remember everything about the security information and event monitoring. That is just with the police, right? That is their information we're talking about?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Goodman?
Yes, I see you have the work plan up on the screen. I know there's another item for that later on, but I didn't see the facilities and space needs in tier 3. So is that being postponed? Is it being deprioritized, or is it just being, I mean, you have it listed as not included, but the AV equipment is 2, and you have AV down as tier 3. So I just wondered what the difference was.
Sure. So the facilities and space needs study was removed from the work plan for fiscal year 22, as was the evaluation of the overall AV equipment upgrades. The item that is listed under tier 3 is really just to address any repairs or upgrades that occur as a result of equipment failure that was unanticipated.
Oh, I see, because we have had some reliability issues with that, so I guess that makes sense. My other question has to do with this changing cellular network situation. That isn't listed down as a decision package, right?
Correct. We don't anticipate that is going to be a large financial cost to the city. There will be some minor costs to switching over all of the cell phones and hardware that are currently on the cellular network, but generally most of the network providers give discounts and trade-in values to current phones, and so there isn't expected to be a significant cost with that project.
Okay, that's a good thing to hear, a whole new project that may not have very big costs. I like it. Good job. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Alderman Kershaw?
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Okay, Alderman Widener?
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Wilson?
No questions nor comments. Thank you.
Thank you. And as for myself, I just wanted to say thank you to Christina for her presentation. The administration part of the staff. It's just a big deal. There's a lot to do. You think that there isn't, but there's just a lot of work to this. So thank you for a job well done. Okay. I guess we'll go on then to number 2, Public Works Department FY 2022 budget presentation, and that would be Deputy Public Works Director. Oh, he's not the deputy. He's just the Public Works Director. He is, we're going to upgrade this sheet right now, get rid of that word deputy. He is the Public Works Director, Phil Kugler. There you go.
Thank you, and good evening. As you might expect, staff's approach this year's budget with the pandemic in mind. Public Works has worked hard to strike a balance between minimizing our expenses while still responsibly maintaining the city infrastructure with which we are entrusted. I'm going to start with reviewing last year's accomplishments. I'm going to start with the Utility Division. We completed an interior rehabilitation of the West Street Water Tower, painted 658 fire hydrants, and an update to the enterprise maintenance and replacement plan. We still have some projects in progress, which are the property acquisition for the Southwest District Water Tower and Well site, water system risk and resilience assessment document, and inflow and infiltration reduction program, which is in ongoing program that's going to continue on well after all of us are gone from the city. It's something that I anticipate is going to be going on as long as the city exists and we have a sanitary sewer system. We do have a long-term contract for the maintenance of the water tower on West Street. So it's, I believe, a 12-year contract. We are currently in year 2, and which involves some repairs to the water tower and the painting of the inside of the water tower earlier this year, fiscal year. After taking 2019 off, staff typically paints 300 fire hydrants per year, so they painted 658 fire hydrants to make up for not painting any in 2019. So we're caught back up to current on that. Staff did work with Alderman Goodman and Alderman Wilson to update and review and update the EMRP document, and that plan was presented to City Council with the associated recommendations last November. We are actively negotiating with the city attorneys, helping us negotiate with a purchase agreement with Thornton's and the property owner of that property to acquire approximately a 1-acre piece of property at the southwest corner of the Thornton's site to build a new water tower and well. Assuming the purchase agreement is approved in the next couple of months, staff anticipates the well construction will occur in calendar year 22. The water tower construction will occur in 2022 to 23. And the air infiltration facility will be constructed between 2023 and 24. Staff drafted the water system risk and resilience assessment documents earlier this year, and we were working with a consultant to help us finalize that document for submittal to the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency at the beginning of fiscal year 22. And finally, the I&I reduction program. The staff has been televising sanitary sewer as part of that. We've had manhole inspections done this year. The picture on the slide is some work where you see that kind of blue-green looking material around the inside of the frame is material that staff applied to the inside of the manhole to help prevent inflow and infiltration into the manhole through the where the frame sits on top of the concrete manhole. The new thing we did this summer was to do some smoke testing in the area of near the industrial park, and staff did a good job of communicating with residents in anticipation of that project leading up to it. Then also as they were performing the smoke testing, it did not take all that long a period of time, and I thought they did a nice job, especially the first time going through with smoke testing sanitary sewer. And those results are being analyzed currently to help inform the construction phase in fiscal year 22. Reviewing last year's accomplishments for StreetDivision, we completed a reduced 2020 road program, private drainage assistance project, and continued an upgrade of East Side storm sewer this year. And then we have still several projects in progress, which we're working with a couple of aldermen on the CMRP updates, resolving the Riggy and Barclay private street maintenance issue, designing the Mac Road Bridge and Trail project, and designing the Trailhead project. As I noted earlier, I think in December, we reduced, and earlier in the calendar year last year, we reduced the road program by about $600,000 due to the pandemic. So we removed I forgot how many streets from the program last year, and we're able to negotiate with the contractor to reduce that project by $600,000. So we delayed those improvements. We also eliminated new vehicle and equipment purchases in this current fiscal year, and eliminated them before the fiscal year, not entirely. Those will be delayed to future fiscal years. Staff was able to construct a private drainage assistance project in the Fox Hollow subdivision that was in the rear yards between Avon and Essex. Staff was also able to complete the second of 3 segments of city storm sewer replacements on the east side. The first segment of that was from Warrenville Road to Virginia, and the second segment, which we just completed this fiscal year, was from Virginia to Lorraine. And it's an existing city sanitary storm sewer that runs largely through backyards and then a little bit of city right away, eventually discharging at Warrenville Road. So we're currently working on upgrading that to increase the capacity of it so we can help ease some drainage problems in that specific area of the east side. Staff is currently working with Alderman Krischel and Alderman Widener to review and update the capital maintenance and replacement plan. I anticipate we've tentatively set the June Public Works Committee meeting is when we would the meeting where we'd present the updated plan and any associated recommendations to City Council. Staff has been working with Alderman Ashar and had been working with former Alderman Bevere and the property owners on the Riggy and Barclay regarding the future ownership and maintenance of those 2 private roads. I anticipate we'll bring Alderman Anderson up to speed on this effort soon. We're currently in the process of working on putting together some documents that will help the property owners make their decisions on which way they want to proceed, whether they want to dedicate those as public roads or continue to maintain them as private roads. That's something I anticipate in the next couple of months. I'll be bringing a recommendation forward to City Council one way or the other, depending on if we're able to get some consensus from the property owners on dedicating those as public roads or not. And we anticipate IDOT approval of the preliminary engineering for the Mac Road project in the next few months. Usually it takes a few months to review those documents. There'll probably be comments that the staff and the design engineer have to address before IDOT will give its final approval on that preliminary engineering document. And then the final engineering for the trailhead project has already commenced, and we're working toward a bid opening in July with construction to occur in the fall of 2021. There are some other projects that fall under, I guess, more like facilities maintenance as I'm looking at them. We completed the Public Works Makeup Air System, which was funded with CARES Act funding. And Christina alluded to this mentioned this in her presentation too. There were several COVID-19 modifications that occurred at city buildings. There are still some projects in progress. The ERP implementation is something that Public Works continues to support and participate in, not quite to the same level that Christina and Kevin and Leo do, but we do spend some time on that as well. And I anticipate as we move further into this fiscal year, we're going to get into some more public works elements now that we're moving past some of the budgeting and finance and HR elements. There's a project to replace and upgrade the HVAC at the police department and the public works reorganization plan. You might recall the makeup air system was installed, I think it was installed in November and December of last year with CARES and was reimbursed with CARES Act funding, so the city didn't have any expenses, or was reimbursed for its expenses on that project by the federal funding that was administered through the county. Our facilities maintenance lead supervisor performed several modifications in city buildings, and Christina mentioned the one most obvious one is the plexiglass and the protection at the counters at finance and community development and administration. Those are the most obvious changes that were made to help protect both the customers coming to City Hall and the employees that work at City Hall. Public Works will continue to support the ERP implementation the rest of this year, and I anticipate probably into next year too. The replacement and upgrade of the HVAC at the police department was a project that was contracted with Train back in late 2019 with the anticipation that we were going to have the project constructed in the spring of 2020. Well, the pandemic, once that hit, we decided to delay that project and have Train store the manufactured equipment for a year, and Train is now mobilizing some of their subcontractors, and I think as soon as this week is going to start working on some of the prep work to complete that project, I think at the latest by the end of March. And the City Council accepted staff's Public Works reorganization plan in December, and the first step in that plan was to change the Deputy Public Works Director position to Public Works Director, and that occurred in January. So looking ahead for Utility Division, first I'm going to focus on the sanitary sewer system, and the sanitary sewer system projects are all revolve around the I&I reduction program, and the different basins are in different stages of analysis and construction this year. And just as a refresher, phase 1 is flow monitoring, and what I anticipate doing is that flow monitoring typically occurs in May because we want to evaluate the system, the sanitary sewer system, when it's the rainiest. To see where the water is finding its way into the system. And so I anticipate bringing an engineering contract forward in April for approval by City Council so we can hit the ground running the very beginning of May and the beginning of fiscal year 22 on that flow monitoring contract. Phase 2 is typically more of an evaluation phase. That's where city staff will televise all the sanitary sewer pipe throughout that particular basin and evaluate the condition of it, recording any deficiencies. smoke testing, which you'll see these 3 pictures on the slide are the smoke testing, or from the smoke testing staff performed this past summer. So a year ago, I was showing smoke testing from other communities as an example, but this is actually, these are the results of what we were doing this summer. And these are where you see smoke coming out is where there are, like maybe a sump pump connected, or, maybe there's an open clean out, a sanitary sewer clean out, a missing lid or something like that. So these are opportunities, deficiencies to identify to correct over time here. And then the other, we hire a vendor to come in and investigate every sanitary sewer manhole in the basin as well as part of this. And we take all that information, and that feeds into working with a engineering consultant to help us to develop bid documents for phase 3, which would be construction. So, and I think that's largely going to consist of manhole repairs and rehabilitation for the most part. And as a side note, staff does, as we discover some of the smaller deficiencies where we might be able to, we have the equipment and time and materials to be able to maybe grout some holes and things like that to stop some of these leaks, some of these smaller leaks. Staff takes care of that as they go along. We have a 2-man sewer crew who has quite a bit of capability to do some of that stuff. It's just the larger projects, like a whole rehabilitation of a manhole, that is a little beyond what they have the time to be able to do within their workload. Moving on to water system projects in fiscal year 22 for the utility division. There's a property acquisition and design for the Southwest District well and water tower. And this next bullet point was a typo in the slides that I handed out or distributed on late last week. The red text that indicates the changes to this this bullet point, but it's preparation or preparing for the exterior rehabilitation of the West Street Water Tower in fiscal year 23. So not this coming year, but and it's looking May of 2022 is when that painting would occur. And then the water system risk and resilience assessment and the update of the emergency response plan for the water system. Those combined documents were a decision package from the current fiscal year, which was PUB 2103. So we anticipate, we're optimistic that we're going to finalize a purchase agreement with Thornton's and the property owner in the next couple of months here, and then we'll move forward through the planning and zoning process for the subdivision and special use permits at the same time. And we'll at that point, while we're going through that process, we'll cut the engineer loose on designing the well and water tower components of that project and getting ready to prepare bid documents. I guess we'd anticipate probably closing is, again, assuming the purchase agreement can be finalized and approved in the next couple of months. We anticipate closing on that property early in fiscal year 22. As we look forward to the exterior rehabilitation of the West Street Water Tower, and that's on West Street south of Deal Road down in Cantera, that project that we're contractually obligated to provide 12 months of notice to the cellular carriers that have equipment on that tower. So this spring, we're going to be working on providing that notice to those cellular carriers. We're working right now to determine who is on there or confirm who is on there and update their contact information so we get those notices to the right people. And then they're required then to temporarily move their equipment off the tower while we're doing our maintenance project. We're also going to be working with the city's branding consultant to figure out how the new logo is supposed to be configured on that tower and the appropriate colors and everything. And while we'll work through that process internally as staff and ultimately make a recommendation to city council with the preferred, working with the consultant, the preferred size and look of the logo on the water tower. And we'll be doing that for this tower down on West Street, as well as the proposed new tower in the Southwest District, because those will be constructed and painted within probably about a year or so of each other. So and they're 2 different sizes too. So we are working on 2 separate, having the consultant help us with the two different sized towers and how the logo looks on them. And as I mentioned earlier, the staff drafted the water system risk and resilience assessment document and is working with the consultant to review and finalize that document for submittal to the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency early in fiscal year 22. And then we'll be working with that same consultant to help us update the emergency response plan for the water system, which is required to be submitted then 6 months after the assessment document is submitted to the IEPA. And looking ahead to fiscal year 22 for the street division, most of theirs obviously at street division revolve around road projects or road related projects. There's the 2021 road program construction, which is again going to be a reduced road program. Typically for the road program, we start working on the bid documents for next year's program during the winter. So currently we're working on the 2021 road program bid documents. A year from now, we'll be working on the 2022 road program bid documents. There's a maintenance project on the Williams Road Bridge, which is going to be funded with state motor fuel tax funding. And the Mac Road Path and Bridge Replacement Project, property acquisition and final engineering will begin in fiscal year 22, and that will be funded with Rebuild Illinois bond funding. As I mentioned, the 2021 road program is going to be a reduced program again due to the pandemic. And it's going to, we're taking the roads that were removed from last year's program, and that's going to be what makes up the entirety of this year's road program. In recent years, luckily, we've caught up on life cycles. I mean, but the city's done a good job of funding and working diligently to make sure that the roads are resurfaced every 15 years. And we've gotten to a point where the vast majority of the roads are on that 15-year cycle. So a couple of years of reduced road programs and, again, fiscal year 21 and 22 won't be the end of the world. We can absorb that, and we've adjusted our planning looking ahead 5 years to account for that and make those adjustments. What I don't want to see happen, and I don't think we can go too far on this, is if you delay for too many years and have a reduced road program for too many years, you end up, instead of having the typical resurfacing projects we have, which are in the big scheme of road projects relatively inexpensive, you end up with reconstruction projects, which are very expensive projects. So I want to try to stay away from that. So we're not at a point where we're in danger of doing that, but I don't want to lose sight of that. I want to make sure that, as we get into fiscal year 23 and 24, we're working our way back to a normal road programs again, hopefully. We'll work on developing the bid documents for the 2022 road program next winter. The Williams Road Bridge has some cracking on the bridge deck. These are surface cracks. They're not structural cracks. There's nothing wrong structurally with the bridge. But there's on the bridge approach and some of the sidewalk and curb and gutter and just the bridge deck itself, which is there to protect the underlying structural elements. There's some cracking that we want to address now. So we're working with an engineer to develop bid documents for repairs to that bridge so the structural elements and portion of that bridge can live out its full useful life, which we anticipate to be like 50 years. So we're going to spend some money this year on that bridge to help prolong its life. And that, as I mentioned, that's going to be funded with state motor fuel tax funding. You may remember a couple of years ago that the state doubled its motor fuel tax from like 19 cents a gallon to 38 cents a gallon. And as a result, they shared that with municipalities. So Warrenville's MFT revenue from the state, it didn't quite double, but it approximately doubled as well. So we have additional revenue the last couple of years and for the foreseeable future that will help allow us to pay for this project. And the Mac Road Path and Bridge Replacement Project, I mentioned the Rebuild Illinois funding. That's bond funding from the state of Illinois that they're paying out in 2 payments per year for 3 years. So it started in 2020, we received 2 payments. We'll receive 2 more payments this year, and then we'll receive 2 more payments in 2022, totaling $865,000, which will pay for most of the city's share of the property acquisition, final engineering, construction, and construction engineering on that project. Currently, the cost estimate for those, the city's share is north of $1 million. So there still will be some additional either MFT funding or general fund funding or some other source from the city to help pay for that project. But the vast majority of the city's share is going to be paid for by the Rebuild Illinois bond funding. And that bond funding has a certain amount, it has stipulations where you can only use it for certain types of projects. So like if we wanted to do just a brand new sidewalk project, we couldn't do that. If we wanted to use it for our annual road program, which is just resurfacing, it's not really allowed for that. It's meant for these bigger projects, a reconstruction or a bridge or something like that. So luckily, to some degree, we have a project where we can spend that money on. It also needs to be spent by July 1st of 2025. So again, the Mac Road project works really well with that time frame because we're looking to go out to bid on that in the fall of 2022 with the intent to construct it during the calendar year of 2023. I did want to touch on too with the CMRP, we are minimizing vehicle and equipment purchases this year. The police department is proposing to purchase 3 squad cars or replace 3 squad cars after not replacing any this current fiscal year. Public Works is proposing to replace the street sweeper after not replacing any vehicles or equipment this current year, and we're not proposing to replace anything else other than the street sweeper in the fiscal year 22 budget. There is an item later in tonight's agenda regarding the street sweeper and also going out to bid on this year's road program. Continuing in the street division, there's a design of the Square Courts Community Development Block Grant Project, which is a decision package, PUB 2203. Design of East Side Streets north of Galusha, pavement rehabilitation, which is a decision package from the current fiscal year, PUB 2102. Resolving the Point Oak Drive private street maintenance issue, and then a couple of storm sewer projects, which would be another private drainage assistance project, and continuing the East Side storm sewer upgrade project. The Square Courts project, city received $220,000 of CDBG money through the county. And in order to access that, we have to follow their process, fill out their paperwork, prepare the plans in their format. So we have to spend a little more money than normal on engineering, although we would have to spend some money on engineering design in preparation for that project in a normal year anyway. But we're anticipating spending $40,000 on engineering design for that project, which would allow us then to access and receive that $220,000 toward the construction of that project. So the net, well, we'll have to spend $40,000. We'll have a net gain of $180,000 saved in the CMRP, which is especially important right now given the loss of revenues the city's experiencing. The design of the east side streets, we're looking at the streets just north of, on the north side of Galusha, and those streets were last resurfaced in 2012, and they're not holding up very well. They're currently in need of resurfacing. So after just 8 years, when they're supposed to last 15 years, they need to be resurfaced. So we're going to be working with a consultant to design the project where we have significant patching to help upgrade those roads, probably overlaying rather than grinding off the surface and overlaying, and then some drainage improvements in that area as well. And that would be for construction in calendar year 2022 with the 2022 road program. Staff will be working with Alderman Ashar and Alderman Anderson and the residents to resolve the long-term ownership and maintenance of Point Oak Drive and that private road next fiscal year. This is a lingering legacy issue that needs to be resolved. Community development has spent a lot of hours on this issue over the last several years. I've been here over 11 years, and they've spent hours on this issue predating my time with the city, and they continue to, whether it be through code enforcement or meeting periodically with the residents to talk through and see if there's consensus on dedicating Point Oak Drive as a public street or not. And it's an issue I think we're determined to figure out, kind of make our last best pitch to them, the property owners out there, and the best we can offer them in terms of making that a public road, and see if there's consensus to move forward on that. And if not, then continue to clearly communicate what's going to be expected in terms of maintenance of that road moving forward, because it is in terrible shape. Storm sewer projects, there's one application for a private drainage assistance project in Summer Lakes that we're evaluating, and if all goes well, we anticipate that would be constructed this summer. The third leg of that east side storm sewer upgrade project, but this would be between Lorraine and Wilbur. We're anticipating constructing this summer. We are working with the residents from last year's project and from this next year's project to sign or execute easement documents to document that there's an easement there in city storm sewer there, so it's clear to everybody that is a city storm sewer. The easements are not consistent out in that neighborhood, and I don't know who installed this pipe or when, but it wasn't done with easements in mind. It was, but my understanding is the city did install this years ago. So we're going to be working with that, and I anticipate bringing all 8 of those easement documents forward to City Council in the next few months for approval, once we can get the property owners all to sign off on them first. And looking ahead to 22 with the other projects, the Public Works reorganization, I have 2 decision packages proposed to create 2 superintendent positions in the fiscal year 22 budget, 2 more decision packages to create the 2 crew leader positions in the fiscal year 22 budget. And I want to be clear, I'm not proposing to add any new staff for fiscal year 22. This is a kind of reorganizing of existing staff. So the intent would be to create the superintendent positions and promote the existing street and utility supervisors at the beginning of the fiscal year. My intent is the total compensation for those 2 positions would be the same as the 2 people in current positions. The crew leader positions I'd anticipate would be created early in the fiscal year, but we'd start the process internally to recruit sometime in the first half of the fiscal year, ultimately anticipating promotions to occur somewhere around the halfway point of fiscal year 22. And again, I want to reiterate, there are no new staff proposed for fiscal year 22 in Public Works. The earliest I could see staff being added would be fiscal year 23, but that's really going to be dependent on how the city's recovery is going from the pandemic. That's something, come a year from now, we're going to be working closely with the city administrator and finance director and evaluating whether we can move forward on that in fiscal year 23 or not before we make a recommendation to city council. And finally, for the remainder of the other projects in fiscal year 22, continuing to support the ERP implementation, developing the Complete Streets implementation plan, and considering solar in the design of the Southwest District Water Tower site and the Trailhead project. As Christina mentioned, there will be some continuation of the ERP implementation into fiscal year 22, although the bulk of it is going to be completed this fiscal year. The city adopted the Complete Streets policy back in November 2019, and I included the Public Works Department work plan for the current fiscal year, but delayed that 1 year due to the pandemic. Now, the city's recovery from the pandemic is going to dictate when the development of that implementation plan can happen. I anticipate currently that it would be the second half of fiscal year 22, but depending on how city finances look at the time, a big component of that implementation plan is going to be to identify a source of funding to help fund any Complete Streets implementation. And without being able to identify a source of funding, that implementation plan becomes sort of useless. So I'm going to make a determination later this in fiscal year 2022 as to whether we move forward with that discussion in 22 or we delay it 1 more year, because I think to have a productive discussion again, we need to have some hope of finding a source of funding for that implementation plan. And the city is working with on the design of some of the preliminary renderings and design. The rendering you see on the slide is the proposed iron filtration facility on that Southwest District water tower site, and those squares, which may or may not be obvious, are solar panels on the roof of that project. So we are working with our design engineer to make sure that solar is included in that design for that project from the beginning. So it'll be designed that way and it'll be bid that way. Likewise, the consultant on the Trailhead project is investigating the possibility of putting solar on the roof of that restroom facility for the Trailhead project too. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, this is again, information only, but we will have discussion. So I'll go through the list. Mayor Brummel?
Thank you. Well, Phil, you certainly have a full agenda for what's going on presently and for what you have plans for in the future. We appreciate your efforts. As always, your department has a very large contribution to the success of how we operate things in the city. And I want to express my gratitude on my part and for the citizens that benefit from your hard work. So keep up the good job. We understand that some things have to be put off. I think you've done a good job in determining which ones can be put off and which ones have to be addressed, which is critical during these times. So my compliments to you and your staff.
Thank you. Alderman Anderson.
Thank you. Only comment, my first time going through this process, I am struck, Phil, by the scale and scope of the efforts from this past year and your plans for this coming year. So encouraged just as a citizen to know that this much attention to detail is occurring. So thank you.
Okay. Alderman Davalos.
Yes, this is overwhelming, but wonderful. I just have a couple clarifying questions and then a comment. So the I&I, you started off by saying we're going to go on forever with the I&I. So I just want to clear up a myth that may be in my head that says once it's over, we don't just restart it. But I guess that's a myth, huh?
Yeah, it's something that as the system will continue to age and deteriorate, there'll be other deficiencies that develop in the system. And after the current plan is to split the city system up into 11 basins. And so it's over actually a 13-year period, because there are 3 phases to each basin in terms of evaluation to construction. I anticipate we'll start back over at the first basin again and analyze that. Now, hopefully there won't be as much to address, but Naperville's been extremely aggressive with their I&I reduction program over the years, and they continue to be even now, even though they've been really successful to date.
Okay, so I guess we'll find out at budget time, but it's running about $500,000 or something a year, something like that, or more.
Yeah, our engineer projected it would be a cost of like 6.6 million over the 11 years, so roughly 100,000.
Okay. Yeah, and so just real quickly, this design square courts, is this a development? I'm just not familiar with what this refers to. I don't think.
Sorry, the square courts are an area of Summer Lakes that have the streets are like kind of square courts. Those particular streets form a square around that have this grass like square court. So that's what we refer to them as staff as the square courts. I'm assuming that's probably referred to by at least some of the community as square courts too, but maybe I shouldn't have assumed that.
Okay, thanks. And I'm very happy about the solar panels. I try to report to the Environmental Advisory Commission every month all the things we're doing, and they're going to be over the moon on this. So thank you very much. And thank you for the snow shoveling lately. It is wonderful. My driveway is not shoveled, but boy, my street is. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Welcome.
Thank you. Alderman Goodman?
Yeah, thank you for that detailed presentation. I appreciated so much of this information, from the branding plan for the water tower to the Rebuild Illinois funding. This is all really good information to have, and it's nice to sort of see it presented as an overview. I do have a couple of questions. My first one is also about the I&I program, so not to repeat too much of what you already just presented to us, but as you just described it, 13 phases because each of the 11 basins is in 3 phases, but basins 1 and 2 are down here for phase 3. And I know basin 1 has sort of the most problems, and that's why you started with that. And I guess my question is sort of broader. Are all of them going to expand their phase 3 over multiple years? Are we going to be doing multiple basins at a time in perpetuity, do you think?
So the reason we included basins 1 and 2 together is basin 1 had I think roughly 40 manhole linings to be done, and we're anticipating actually basin 2 is going to have more than that. We thought it'd be more cost effective to combine them into one project this year instead of having two smaller projects. So I don't know if that'll happen all that often, and we didn't do any, aside from what staff has done, we didn't hire a contractor to do any improvements in basin 1 last year, so that got pushed to this year.
Okay, so we don't think this will typically happen, but there could be some efficiencies like that, where just doing all the repairs in several areas at a time would be cheaper?
Yes, yeah. Typically, if you buy more of a particular product or something, if you buy 40 of them as opposed to 5, then you can get usually a little better unit price on them, or price per item, and that's the rationale we're using here. The 40 manhole linings is not a small project, but it's small to have a contractor mobilize and come out to do it. So we're hoping to have a better price by combining that with the basin 2 manhole linings.
Okay, so in the future, as basin 3 is in phase 2 and basin 4 is in phase 1 this year, we think it'll just be basin 3 in phase 3 next year and so on?
Yes.
Because if we're spreading the money out more evenly, that's just a little bit of a different financial picture for things like the EMRP. This is why I'm asking.
Yes. Yeah, I anticipate it'll be 1 basin per year of construction normally.
Okay. If it ends up being more cost effective to do larger projects every other year, that's also a financial projection we could work into the EMRP. But I don't really know what other kinds of phase 3 costs there might be, or whether we're going to end up with small projects that can be attended to within the year by our own staff, or if we're going to have to be contracting a lot of these repairs out. It depends upon what kind of problems you find that need to be fixed.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, that'll be interesting to discuss in future ERP work group meetings. My second question has to do with the Williams Road Bridge maintenance. You talked about sidewalk, curb and gutter, some cracking of certain elements to extend the life of the bridge, but isn't the Williams Road Bridge practically brand new?
Yes, it's about 5 years old, I believe, if I remember correctly, which year it was constructed in 2015, I think. And we walked through with the structural engineer we use and we're using for to inspect the bridges, and they're designing the Mac Road Bridge. Jamie Clark and I met her out there earlier this year to walk through it, and the cracking isn't bad, but what the cracking does is it allows water to seep through it. And she was looking at the design of it. The design of it's consistent with what designs used to be for bridges. But one of the issues is that they didn't provide, typically with concrete, you provide joints to allow it to kind of control where the cracking happens. And in that joint, you provide some protection to help keep water and salt and that type of stuff from seeping through the cracks, and to let it continue to drain off of the surface to where it's supposed to go. That wasn't part of the design of this bridge. And I was here, but I wasn't involved in the design of the bridge. So I don't know why, as I'm looking at it, why they didn't. As I'm looking at it now, logically, you would design it with places for the concrete to crack, because concrete does crack. If you look at your floor of your basement, if you look at sidewalks, you look at driveways, they put joints in there to help control that. So it doesn't end up with these jagged cracks, but rather, try to control it in these straight lines and crack where you want it to. So yes, it is really new. So I don't like spending money on it right now, but I do want it to last. It's 50 years, so we don't have to be worried about it. And it's definitely money well spent now to prolong the life of it.
Okay, well, I guess I would have two comments about that. One is that we need to keep all of these issues at the front of our mind when designing the Mac Road Bridge. And secondly is that if the design was done by contractors, we might not want to hire them the next time. Or if there are contractors who are responsible for these things, and if any of them are actually defective, it doesn't sound like it's defective necessarily the way you describe it, but if there turn out to be mistakes that were made or defects, then we need to go back and talk to those contractors.
Right. And we are not using the same consultant for the design of Mac Road, nor the repair. I mean, we're using the same consultant. The Mac Road consultant is the same one we're using for the repairs, but not the one that designed Williams Road Bridge. That consultant isn't. We don't work with that consultant anymore currently.
Okay, well, I don't know if the city attorney is interested in considering the liability questions there, and I don't know if staff thinks that that's commonly done in these sorts of situations, or if it's not necessary. And I don't know what the scale of the problems are or how much money we're talking about either. So this is just my reaction to what you've told us. I'm not familiar with the problems here.
Sure, and my general experience with construction projects is the warranties tend to be just for a year or so, and once after the project's accepted, and we're well past a year, although very short, very early in the lifespan of the bridge itself.
Yeah, that's probably true for the construction, but I'm not so sure about the design. Anyway, I'm glad we're going to be able to deal with it and hopefully still have the full 50-year life of the bridge. And I'm glad that there's MFT funding available from the state for that. So overall, great job. I would second Alderman Davalos's comments about the solar project. That looks very appealing. So yeah, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Krischel.
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Alderman Widener.
Thank you. I'm really glad to see the attention given to the solar projects. I've been receiving a lot of comments about the police department who obtained a grant, for the solar-powered speed limit signs, and people are speaking highly and well of those, and they're glad to see the city moving in the direction of providing or offering solar-powered systems wherever we can. So I'm glad to see that. With regard to the extra charge for the logo on the water tower, do we have any idea on whether that's I imagine that's probably an extra that is added into the cost of painting the water tower. Would you be able to supply us with what that charge would be?
I don't know if there's any extra. I
when
mean,
you
on the current water tower, there is the city logo is already on it. So that I don't know if there's anything extra because they're already anticipating putting a logo onto the tower to start with. And we're going to be working with them. I was talking with the branding consultant. He'd like to be involved in when the time comes, the color selection process with the contractor, because when you have something that's outside, the sun tends to wash out the colors. He estimated like 20 to 25%. And so they tend to like to do samples out in the field to see how the color actually looks in the sun. So I'm going to be, once we figure out what the logo is supposed to look like and the size and everything, I'm going to be going back to the contractor that we have under contract for the West Street water tower and talk with them about that, plus involving the consultant in the process. I don't believe there'll be any, they'll increase the charge for the new logo to be on there.
It's just, yeah, I just expected that there'd be an extra versus painting it a solid color. If there is a line item extra for that, I'd just be curious to know what that feature is going to cost the city. Not that I would exclude it, but I would just be curious to know what that option costs.
Okay.
With regard to the road projects, it sounds like there was some early deterioration of the roads that were north of Galusha, you mentioned in your report, and we also have the cracking of the bridges. I just wonder, is any of this related to vehicle weights, or is it all just the way they were constructed and normal deterioration?
For the east side streets, that's an area that the city inherited those roads. Those weren't constructed to city standards. I mean, I know last time they were resurfaced, looking at them, there was a really thin layer of asphalt on them, and Mike Smith did a good job working with the contractor to try to increase the thickness of those roads, particularly south of Galusha was where I remember that effort. I think it's just the way those roads were constructed years ago, and then chip and sealed or overlaid or whatever over the years by the township before the city received them. So I think that's it. We're gonna do what we've done on some of the other roads and try to beef up the edges with some thicker patching, because that's usually where the deterioration starts, is on the edges, because there's no curb and gutter to hold the edge of pavement in. As far as the bridge is concerned, where the cracks are happening doesn't surprise me. I mean, they're happening over the beams of the bridge, which again doesn't surprise me that they would happen there, given that's where the concrete is flexing over that. So they're not severe cracks, but they are cracks. So we want to make sure we take care of them. But I don't think that's the bridge was designed to withhold whatever weights are going over it.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other, I guess, cracking that's developing on the other new bridge over the river on Warrenville Road, or has that been inspected?
I haven't looked close at that because it's a county bridge. It's a totally different method of construction than the Williams Road Bridge. The Williams Road Bridge has beams. It's more typical construction with beams, and then they paved a bridge deck over the top of some beams. The Warrenville Road Bridge is a post-tension bridge, so they have conduit going through the bridge, and they pull these cables and tension these cables, and after the concrete is poured and everything, and that's where it gets its strength, is these cables that are pulled through the conduit in the bridge. I know they had some issues like in construction with something was designed incorrectly, and the contractor did something because of the design incorrectly, and they corrected that before pretty quickly at that point. And I'm not aware of any crack in the bridge deck there, but that's a different method of construction.
Do you know if that one's been inspected since the time of the correction to the tensioners, or the improvement that they made, or the correction that they made to it?
I can ask, but bridges are required to be inspected every 2 years by IDOT. So my assumption is it's been inspected every 2 years since then. I don't receive copies of those reports because DuPage DOT is responsible for that bridge.
Okay. And then with the potential elimination of the stalling of the Complete Streets program, will you be able to identify, like with the roads programs, which features will be affected by that? Like, and I'm thinking mainly of the sidewalks, you know, and a lot of individuals and people's minds, I think the sidewalks are an important asset that the city should consider as it develops its, you know, improves its streets. And certainly during COVID, we've seen great use of our trails and pathways and things like that. And I would just hate to abandon an important feature like that that would grant access at key points and connect corridors and things like that. So I was just wondering if we can somehow have a placeholder on that so that we're alerted when the roads program moves forwards of which roads that are scheduled for rebuilding or reconstruction will eliminate sidewalks, or where sidewalks will be stalled in the future.
Yeah, I can note that. I mean, even on the road program for this, for 2021, I think Waverly and Riverside Avenue are rural cross sections without sidewalks. I think the rest of the, Cantera Village has sidewalks. The Husky Highway has sidewalks. I think most of them do have sidewalks this year. But the challenge with trying to add sidewalks to a project is right now we're trying to stop the bleeding for the city revenues, and you're looking at struggling just enough to replace and maintain what we have, and delaying projects we already have under contract. Cutting, like last year, cutting the road program by $600,000 for stuff that we have already that we have to maintain. To try to find revenue to pay for new stuff is going to be even more challenging at this point. But that's why I do think the funding part of that is that implementation plan is really important, and I want to make sure that we're at a point where when we're discussing that, we can actually have a good conversation about where that funding can come from. Because I do think I completely appreciate the fact that where people don't have sidewalks in neighborhoods, many people would appreciate it. I'm not going to say 100% of the people would appreciate it, but there are a significant amount of people that would appreciate having sidewalks where there aren't any.
Okay. And hopefully you're always looking for the grants that might support those kinds of things. I know you've always been great about that in the past, and hopefully, you never know that money's going to fall out of the sky, but you hope that, there's motor fuel tax, or that there becomes some sort of supportive mechanism outside of city dollars that might help us, to get there and create these sidewalks in areas where they're important. And then my last question is, with the new positions that you're identifying, will the personnel's salary ranges change with those additions?
I would anticipate, yes, they would change. I don't know for the going from supervisor to superintendent. My assumption is they would move up one salary range. They're currently, the supervisors are paid, so effectively a base rate for their 40 hours, and then they get paid overtime for the various amounts of overtime they work. So they're working supervisors, so they're out on water main breaks, they're plowing snow and doing that type of stuff in off hours. They rotate in as part of the on-call schedule. They would not be doing, initially, because we wouldn't be backfilling the crew leader positions, the superintendents and the crew leaders would still have to be doing a lot of what they're doing now. But the structure would be there to, when we are able to add 2 laborers down the road, that we could bring them in and the structure be set appropriately. The crew leaders, I don't know quite where they would fall yet, because we haven't done as much investigation as what their salary would be. I don't even know if those would be union positions or not. And again, this would be a timely year given the negotiations with the unions to work through the crew leader positions and understand, do the union want them to be part of the union? Does the city want them to be part of the union or not? Negotiate that.
Thanks. When it becomes available, I'd be interested to see how the salary ranges change with those new positions.
Okay.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Welcome.
Call on me.
Administrator Coakley has a comment.
Yeah, if I could just fill in on some of the information that Phil was just sharing about the new positions. The two supervisors that would be promoted to superintendent are currently hourly employees. So they have an hourly rate and they're eligible. They're not exempt under FLSA, Federal Fair Labor Standards Act. So they get overtime for the extra hours that they work. The new positions would be more of a management level and qualify to be exempt positions. So the pay ranges that we have in our pay plan, and we're doing a study to survey to make sure that we have all those accurate for the current time, would be at a level where that would be taken into account. So their new rates would be higher than their current rate of pay, but would also, in essence, also be high enough that it covers that overtime. So to be a wash in a sense in that regard is what Phil's referring to. But they're going from hourly and eligible for overtime, and they do get overtime, to exempt where they would be compensated at a higher rate that would in a way make up for the loss of that overtime, but be about even.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question.
Go ahead.
Would someone else then in the other positions then accumulate that same overtime that you're thinking is a wash, or will that overtime end up being eliminated from the budget?
I'd anticipate until we eventually fill so the way this, the two supervisors get promoted to superintendent, the two of the laborers get promoted to crew leader, which becomes a working supervisor. Eventually we'll have to hire two laborers to backfill those spots. For the time being, the superintendents are going to have to work some overtime. They aren't getting paid for it, but they're going to have to work, they're not going to be extra for it. They're going to have to work some overtime and participate at least in some of the activities, because we aren't going to have enough staff to work the available overtime. Now, they're not going to work overtime instead of hourly employees, and they're not going to go out there and replace somebody that would otherwise be working overtime normally. So that wouldn't be fair for the union employees. But the only spot where I see the hourly employees gaining a little bit of overtime potentially is the on-call rotation, because the superintendents would not participate in the on-call rotation. So somebody would have to pick up their, they'd be pulled out of that. So the other people would rotate through that on-call rotation a little bit more frequently to make up for that.
Okay. Alderman Widener, do you have any other questions?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Wilson.
Thank you. Been a lot of questions here, and thanks very, very much for the presentation. I know it's a tough job you have there, and you're doing a great job to this point. I do have just a few questions, and the one last right there about the reconstruction or the reestablishment of the Public Works Division, with the recommendations of hiring new people. I'm very much interested in the financial aspect of this whole program that we're going to take. So I am looking forward to a lot of the detailed aspects of the cost factors that we have to reconstruct the public works. But you're doing a fantastic job. There's an awful lot of things that are going on right now. And with the bridges that we have and everything that we have on the boards, that we have to be very, very careful about what we do and where we put our priorities in the future here until we get out of this whole problem that we're facing. But thank you very, very much. I know you're doing a great job. You guys are doing a good job at Public Works. But we are going to be asking questions as we go through this thing with each one of these programs, including that II and the total cost that this is taken with us. But we'll look forward to working with you and seeing if we can all come up with a program that fits our needs and we're able to afford. So thanks again. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Alderman.
Thank you. I also had a lot of questions about the Williams Road Bridge, considering it was only 5 years old in last November, and why we were doing repairs, but most of those questions have been answered. And I want to thank you for the solar, which will be used. I know that's always of interest to everyone here on the City Council, and also in the community. And thank you for the presentation. I know there's a lot of work involved in this, and there's a lot of work that you guys do. So thanks again. Okay, that was also a information only. So we'll go on to number 3, consideration of proposals for franchise agreement for waste management contracts. This would be Assistant City Administrator White will do the presentation.
Thank you. The current waste contract expires on April 30th. So we did put out a request for proposals for new contracts based on the discussion we had with the council a few months ago. A couple of things I want to point out, and then I've got some slides to share. The proposals that have come in from the 4 different haulers, there is no option to continue exactly the current program as is. The sticker program we currently have is a simple, you pay for your stickers based on consumption and use, and that includes recycling. With an optional cart. The new programs, all that are sticker programs, all include a base monthly fee, which is different from our current program. So any decision to move forward with any of the 4 proposals will require a change to the service as it exists currently. The contracts would be for 5 years. That's what the proposals are for, beginning May 1st, including all single family and attached single family homes. No apartments or commercial buildings are included in this contract. There is a lot of detail provided in the memo, several pages of tables and charts. This was done to try to summarize all of the different aspects and pieces of the proposals. There is a lot of information. We recognize that there is no perfect solution, and there's going to be, again, a change to the program regardless of the decision this evening. But I do want to emphasize that the 2 options are, one is a sticker-based program, which is volume-based and includes the option of a monthly fixed cart rental fee that somewhat closely mirrors our current program. And then the other option is to go completely cart-based. So to try to simplify the explanation of this, I did put together some slides. So I'm going to share that. Okay. So again, we issued a request for proposal. We've got the 2 different program options included. We received 4 proposals from one from Flood Brothers Group, Lakeshore, and Waste Management. Of the 4 proposals, only 3 included a sticker-based program option. All include curbside recycling and all offer a food scrap collection option, which was also part of the discussion a few months ago. So in this chart, we are looking at the cost of the sticker option. These tables are included in the memo as well, but for anybody watching at home, I just wanted to pull out the details. Looking strictly at sticker comparison, monthly base fee, and the unit cost of stickers. You can see the different year base fees for the 3 different proposals. The 5-year average ranges from $4.03 per month to $15.28 per month. That is on top of the cost of the sticker. So, and if we were to continue with a sticker-based option, every household would pay a base monthly fee, regardless of the number of stickers they use, and then in addition to that, buying stickers to affix to their garbage. The unit cost of the stickers on a 5-year average ranges from $3.19 to $5.60. We did include in the memo the current rates as of the program right now. The refuse stickers are $5.22 a piece for comparison purposes. This next round of charts is focused on the cart service option. There are generally 3 sizes, 35 gallon, 65, and 95. You can see the different pricing per month. This includes both waste and recycling, and it's a flat rate for the cart service every month, with the average on the 95 gallon cart over the 5 years of $16.44 to $25.84. The current monthly toter service is $22.95 for the 95 gallon toter. For the 35 gallon cart, I would just want to point out that under Groot's proposal, that pricing is available to seniors over 65 only, and it is a reduced rate of $12.22 on average over the 5 years per month, which is currently the equivalent of approximately just over 2 stickers. This is not the cart. This does not represent any of the carts of the 4 proposers or bidders that we have. But I wanted to compare sizes because we did get some questions today from aldermen and from residents about the different size carts. And so just to provide some sort of visual comparison so you can kind of see the different sizes, the 95-gallon being the largest of the 3, and the 35-gallon option being a smaller option. So the following slides are comparing the 2 recommendations. So staff's recommendation is to go with the cart service as proposed by Groot. If the council chooses to continue a sticker program, then the recommendation is for Lakeshore Recycling. So these next few slides compare those 2 programs, and it's really basically a comparison of the stickers versus the cart service. So we looked at 2 stickers per month for a household over each of the 5 years of the proposed contract. You can see roughly the LRS stickers average about $11 per month to $12.39 per month. That includes the base fee applied plus 2 stickers. The Groot Unlimited service is $15.49 per month for the 95 and the 65-gallon cart for year 1, up to $17.43 per month at year 5. And then the senior rate again is a discounted $11.50 per month to $12.96 per month at year 5. And the dollar amounts, the $132, $138, $185, those are on an annual basis. The households using 4 stickers per month, again, you can compare with the stickers, assuming 4 stickers plus the base monthly fee. You're looking at about $18 a month to $20.28 per month, compared to the unlimited cart service with Groot is $15.49 per month to $17.43, and then the senior, again, senior discounted rate at the 35-gallon. This table is intended to compare the Groot Unlimited service again to Lakeshore's monthly toter rental. Again, the option with the sticker-based program does allow for a resident to choose to rent a monthly toter and have a monthly toter fee rather than using the stickers. So that is what this is comparing. So the monthly toter rental under the sticker program with LRS is going to cost about $25.50 a month to $24.20 a month over the course of the contract. And again, we're comparing to the Groot Unlimited service option. The staff looked at both the sticker-based program and the cart-based program. There's pros and cons to both programs. There are households in town that are not generally putting out garbage every single week. They may only be using a couple of stickers a month. For those individual households, a sticker program allows for cost control because if they're not using the garbage service, they're not currently paying for stickers for those weeks. Under these new programs, they would still have to pay the base fee every month, regardless of whether they're putting out garbage or not. But it does still allow some control of the cost based on the sticker usage. Residents can use any style cart or container that they've purchased at a store or rented through the hauler. Lakeshore is offering a 65-gallon recycle cart as part of their program, so every household would get a 65-gallon recycle cart. And food scrap is also included with yard waste under the Lakeshore proposal, which is again the sticker-based. Under the cart-based service, it is an unlimited collection of waste and recycling for the 95 and 65-gallon carts. So if you have additional garbage outside of the 65 and 95-gallon cart, they will take that other garbage as long as it's bagged or in a container and neatly placed at the curb. It offers standardized carts, which provide uniformity, tend to be cleaner. Lidded carts reduce the amount of debris in the streets on windy days when there's otherwise recycling and garbage potentially blowing around. You don't have as many issues with animals getting into them because of the lid. And there's a convenience factor because you're not needing to worry about whether or not you have stickers at home to put out your garbage. They also are offering, Groot is also offering a food scrap recycling option if you subscribe to the yard waste monthly subscription service during the yard waste season. In terms of transition, again, we will be having a transition regardless of which option we choose. The Lakeshore and Groot both have committed to a transition process that partners with the city to provide information and carts and answer questions. That is all part of the proposal. There will be some significant staff time and resources allocated to transitioning because we expect there will be information needed, communication with the residents, and obviously questions about the changes to the service. And then finally, there will be a follow-up discussion that we need to have either way, if we stay with the Lakeshore sticker program or move to Groot with the cart service, what to do with the waste management stickers that may be left behind, or if we have residents who buy in bulk, which we think does occur, there will likely be stickers that are not used between now and April 30th, and so there'll need to be some discussion about a buyback or some other option. One other thing I would like to mention with the differences between the cart service and the sticker program, we've heard in the past that stickers tend to encourage recycling because it is more volume based. It's very difficult to tell whether there's truth to that or not. We have seen over the last few years, according to our current waste hauler, as sticker prices go up, the amount of garbage collected goes down. Whether that means that they're recycling more or finding other ways to dispose of the garbage, that's a difficult thing to really prove or look at. We do know that there's contamination with the recycling, that we continue to do education programs because of the contamination with recycling. So I don't know that there's exactly a one-for-one with the sticker program providing for more recycling, but I did want to mention that because I know that's come up in the past. That is all I have to cover, and be happy to answer questions.
Okay, I will go through the list for questions. Mayor Brummel?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I guess I'm in support of the staff recommendation to go with Groot on the cart-based service. Christine and I had a long conversation this morning, and most of my questions were answered. It's a very difficult decision because we're not comparing apples to apples here. It's like apples to oranges and apples to bananas. It's hard to get a nice direct comparison. But I am, for a number of reasons, I think in favor of switching to the carts. One, it's going to look a lot better throughout the community to have a uniform collection for our recycling and for our waste instead of the sometimes creative way that garbage is put out now and the various and sundry different collectors for the recycling. So I think in terms of appearance, it will look nicer for the community. There will certainly be less mess. The carts are fitted with lids, so we're not going to have windblown debris and critters getting into the carts as much. The convenience factor of having to write a check every 2 months or quarterly, I think, outweighs having to wonder whether you have stickers and make sure that you get those from somewhere in town, either from City Hall or from some other vendor. So I think all in all, the cart arrangement is a lot more attractive. Comparing prices, I think there's going to be, for someone like myself, we're retired, we don't have kids, we use only a couple stickers a month. The cart may be a little bit more expensive than that, but I think the convenience and, again, the benefit to the appearance of the city outweighs that slight cost to me. So that would be my preference. I'll be interested to see what the council has to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Anderson.
Yeah, a couple questions. Can you talk a little bit more about the unlimited concept? So if you are a household that has many kids at home and generates a decent amount of waste, and now you're going to exceed on the waste side that 95-gallon tub cart, are you required or expected to have a second cart? Second thing, in the recycling, you order a mattress, you order a something, and it comes in these massive pieces of cardboard that would be difficult to get chopped down and into a 95, you know, how is that handled in this model?
So the unlimited refuse piece of it, that's correct. If you have more than what fits in the 95 gallon, you can set it next to either using a container or whatever kind of a bin you might have, or in garbage bags neatly tied. I believe there are some other details about the parameters for excess garbage, and we can certainly ask Groot to chime in because their representatives are available. And actually, I am going to ask them to talk about the large mattress box option. So Josh, I believe you're on the call.
Good evening, I am. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great. Well, first of all, thanks, Christina. I appreciate City Council for the time to address and the opportunity in general. To answer, I think, the two questions, as long as everything's properly prepared outside, in addition to a full 95 gallon cart or 65 gallon cart option on the garbage, we will take it. They will not have to be stickered under this program. And regarding the recycle, is the same way. As long as it's prepared in a way where we can collect it, it will be taken outside of a full cart, regardless of the amount. So it is truly unlimited in nature in terms of both garbage and recycle service. And that would include large boxes like you mentioned.
Okay, that's very nice to hear. Secondly, you know, Groot, I've seen Groot a lot. They seem, you know, very prevalent in the community or around our community, et cetera. But I know very little about Lakeshore Recycling. Is there a package that just helps us understand that they're a mature enough platform to bring in, and that we don't have any implementation risk associated with them?
Yeah, they did provide a list of references. They do have other municipal clients in the area, and we did reach out to some of the references and started doing reference checking with both Groot and Lakeshore. And so far, the reference information we've received has been positive for both companies.
Okay, and then the last question, the constituents that I've heard from today, mainly on the smaller end of the scale, as the mayor referred to, only use a couple stickers a month, but we're open to the concept of going to a cart, but wondered, does the senior discount only apply to the, I think it's 35 gallon versus the 65 gallon?
That's correct. The senior discount applies only to the 35 gallon cart option. The 65 and the 95, because they're unlimited, there is no senior discount applied to those sizes.
Okay.
But the benefit for those residents that might only put out garbage currently once or twice a month is with the 35 gallon cart, they can put out garbage and recycling every week, and therefore accumulate less over the course of a month.
No. And did you ever, was there a comparison to, I respect the fact there's going to be change no matter what. The impact to someone who would only be a 2-sticker person with Lakeshore or the other company versus the senior 35 gallon. What was that difference?
Let me pull that back up for you. So a household using 2 stickers a month with Lakeshore is looking at roughly $11 a month in year one. And again, that's the $5 base fee and then $3 per sticker. So that's where the $11 comes from. The senior rate with Groot is $11.50, and that would include, again, putting out garbage and recycling every week at the 35 gallon cart.
Okay, very helpful. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Alderman Davalos.
Yeah, hi. Wow. Okay, so I have a question. Now, you're getting recycled for free, right? So the cart cost is not, if you have a 35 gallon, 235 gallons as a senior, you're not paying that twice, are you?
Correct. All of the programs include the recycling as part of the cost.
Okay. So the other thing is, so if you're a senior, both of your carts have to be, how would you charge it if you wanted a larger recycle bin for all the Amazon boxes and everything? And you wanted a 65-gallon recycle. I mean, I guess you could put the Amazon boxes next to the cart, I suppose. But what if you wanted a bigger recycle bin than necessarily the trash?
Under the cart service?
Under the cart service. You couldn't really do that. You'd pay half of the 65 and half of the 30. How would you calculate what your bill would be? Or can you even do that?
That's a good question. Josh, is there an option to upgrade the recycle cart?
Yeah, the idea is that the standard cart that would be delivered for recycle would be overall a 65-gallon cart, but residents would have a choice to go up or down. Also, if you have a smaller cart and you just occasionally have more recycle, just remember that anything outside of the cart will be taken as well. So you'll have plenty of options, including the cart size, if you want to go up and down. That would not affect the prices outlined in our proposal.
So you could still pay the 35-gallon senior rate, but you could get a 65-gallon recycle.
Correct.
Okay, great. That is wonderful. A little expansion on the yard waste. Like, where do we get the stickers? What do we have our own container that we put the stickers on for the yard waste? How does that work?
So the yard waste, the stickers would be sold at City Hall. We haven't talked about whether or not they would be available at any other retailer. That's something we need to address. In terms of the cart or bag, you could use a yard waste bag. You could use a yard waste cart or container. As long as it's stickered appropriately, it will be taken.
Okay. So I put out one sticker every 3 weeks, and I was calculating with the Lakeshore thing, it would be about $10, and with the Groot carts, it would be around 12. And so for me, so we're talking $2 here, but I have lids on the carts, I have wheels on the carts, and there's a lot of advantages, I think, and the yard waste seems very reasonable for that sticker. And I guess you can put certain food in that during the landscape months or something, but so that's an advantage for some people. So I think once I figured it all out, I was talking a couple bucks, and I was getting, and I'm atypical. Most people don't put their trash out every 3 weeks, but I think it works for me, believe it or not. In my little situation here, I have to think bigger than myself, but I think it's a good choice to move to this card. I don't think I'm losing money really for what I'm getting. And certainly the more stickers people use, it becomes better and better for them with the prices that Groot has. And the Lakeshore prices seem a little bit, I talked with you, Christine, about this. Those sticker prices are not very much. They're almost half of what we pay now. So I just wonder if that's real or not, how that's going to hold up. How they're going to, but that's their problem, not mine. But I look, it's nice to be stable. Okay, that's it.
So
Thanks.
Just a couple points of clarification on the cart service with Groot. The food scrap collection is included if you subscribe to the yard waste cart service. It is not included, unless Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not included with the sticker yard collection. It's only on the cart-based service.
So do they give you a landscape container if you subscribe to the service?
Yes, you get a separate toter for yard waste if you subscribe to the yard waste collection.
And do you have to pay every month even though it's only collected April through November or something?
You pay, I believe there's a cost for the season.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an annual seasonal rate.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all.
And one other just point on the Lakeshore stickers. We did, in the discussion we had with all of the bidders during the pre-proposal meeting in advance of them submitting their proposals, there was a lot of discussion and question about the amount of garbage and recycling that is collected on a monthly basis. The city doesn't currently track the monthly collection in tons. We only have data for the full year. So each bidder was encouraged to propose what they thought was reasonable, and part of that is why they've included base fees. They won't really know until they start collecting in the community whether or not they have to make adjustments. But certainly that's part of the consideration with the sticker pricing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Goodman.
Thank you. Yes, I have a few questions. In line with what you were just talking about with the recycling, when you say that the toter rate comes with a bin, you are talking about separate bins. You're not talking about a bin with a divider, right?
Correct. So you get one refuse and garbage bin and one specific for recycling.
Okay, and for people who might have a yard waste subscription or might have different subscriptions options, or for people who might have the senior option or the larger option or whatever, they select from the menu. I'm just talking about Groot now. The recycling bin is the same for everybody and it's no charge for everybody. And you're going to still be encouraged to reduce and minimize the amount of waste that you produce.
That is correct. So you will select, as part of the transition, you'll select the size toter that you would like. If you are selecting the 35 for the senior discount, there will be probably some additional information or form that you may have to fill out to qualify for that. So if you select the 95-gallon toter, generally Groot is going to provide a 65-gallon recycling toter. However, as Josh mentioned, you have the option to request a larger or smaller toter to fit your needs. And that is not, there's no additional cost to that.
Okay, up front, but if a bin breaks or if your needs change over time and you need another bin, then you'll have to pay for a new bin?
There is a charge if you have to replace a bin that is a toter that is damaged. I believe that was included in the backup in the supplemental information.
So let me jump in real quick on toters that are damaged due to normal wear and tear. Since we own and maintain those, we would replace those carts at no additional charge. If for some crazy reason, even though it's happened before, if someone burns and melts their cart down, then you might look at a scenario where they pay to replace it. But in terms of normal wear and tear, a lid breaks, wheels break, that's on us, and we replace that at no additional charge.
Okay. In this city, we have prioritized recycling and we have prioritized our green initiatives. And so one of the things that I've heard most frequently this weekend from residents who heard about this issue coming before us today is how are we going to be able to minimize waste under a program that doesn't involve stickers? So what do you do as a company at Groot to educate people about recycling or how not to contaminate their recycling or to encourage people to recycle more and throw out less?
So on the onset, what we like to do is do a combination of a joint letter, with the city and then a brochure. The brochure would outline not only the program, its options, but also what is and is not recyclable. In addition to that, we've developed our own app that allows residents to go on and register under their own address. And in that scenario, they can actually look up individual materials and find out if they are or are not recyclable. And what we found, to be honest, on the difference between the cart programs and the sticker programs, far often than not, we find a lot more contamination, unfortunately, in the sticker programs than we do in the cart programs. So our experience in the service area has been that we usually get cleaner recycling on the cart programs generally. But in terms of communication directly to residents, obviously city staff would always be consulted before we were to send anything out to make sure we're all on the same page before anything hits the streets.
Okay, the last time we heard a presentation like this, I guess it was from the waste management representative several months ago. They talked about having a education program with little hangers that they would put on the toters. Do you do anything like that?
Yeah, so I believe what that may be referring to is kind of a what some industry companies might call a sorry tag, where we see contamination, it's almost a warning of, hey, we've seen this in your recycle cart. This is not recyclable. Please please correct moving forward. So it's kind of just a reminder of what is and isn't, because there's a lot of common things that residents might throw in there that they don't realize isn't, or what we call wish recycling, where if they're not sure, they'll throw it in the recycling anyway, like a hose or something like that. So I think that's what they probably were referring to, but we have that as well. And that really only occurs if we start seeing down the line loads with heavy contamination, then we follow that back to the route. And then we take a look at those individual routes on those individual streets. But if we're down to that, if we're looking at that specifically, we usually notify staff before we do something like that.
Okay. My next question has to do with billing. How do you do your collections and how do people pay?
So we bill quarterly in advance. So 4 times a year. Residents can pay online, can pay over the phone. So there's multiple options in which they can do that.
The smaller toter option for seniors, is there some reason why that isn't available for younger people who don't have much trash?
Yeah, I mean, the program as it was designed in the RFP spec was unlimited. So we took the opportunity to provide kind of a bridge from where you are now in terms of a sticker program and allow an option for those that might not have as much. So the 65 and 95, for example, are the same rate, but they're both unlimited, meaning they could put out the same amount outside the cart and it would still cost the same. So that's why they're priced the same. We wanted to create the 35 as a way for those which typically are seniors that don't have a lot of volume, and allow and pass on that savings to them. So that was actually something Christina and I were talking about, the potential of an option of a 35 that's non-senior, and that's something that I told Christina that we were willing to discuss.
Okay, so how would we go about expressing interest in that, or if we hear from people in the community? Because I've heard from a couple of people in the community today who were interested in that.
Yeah, I guess that would be, I mean, Christina, we talked today, so I haven't had a whole lot of time to kind of tackle that, but something I'd be more than willing to do moving forward prior to any approval or execution of an agreement.
Okay, that's very good to hear. And my last question has to do with the composting. So I believe what you said was that the composting option, food scraps, is only going to be available for people who have a yard waste toter paying for the full season project and not in individual containers. So what kind of composting are people going to be able to do? Is it vegetable scraps? I know in Wheaton, weirdly, they even allow meat, which I was surprised by.
Yeah, typically the big ones are fruits and veggies. There are some, do's and don'ts. In fact, our brochure would lay out the do's and don'ts just like we do on the recycle side. But it's typically fruits and veggies, eggshells, things like that. We stay away from bones. It really depends on the compost sites themselves, because at the end of the day, they've got to take that material and turn it into a material they can market. So a lot of that, it will hinder them, something like bones and things like that. So that's something that would be communicated well ahead of time in both, maybe even a joint letter and a brochure.
Okay, so everyone will have lots of information about what they can and can't compost if they take advantage of this program. I mean, I've had people, I'd say over the last 5 years, approaching me with interest in composting options here in Warrenville. So I think there will be people who want to use that and who will be excited that we're finally offering that as an option. And I'm glad that any option we go with tonight has the composting included. I think people will be happy to hear about that. So those are all my questions. Thank you.
Very good. Alderman Krischel.
Thank you. Just 2 questions. So with the cart service, and I'm a cart customer now, so I understand the advantages there. With the addition of the recycling cart, so imagine 2 65-gallon or 95-gallon totes sitting in your garage, or I guess my question is kind of around storage, and if some folks maybe don't have so what are the code enforcement storage requirements for these things, and will we run into issues with that?
That is a good question, and I don't have an answer for you, but I can get one before the next meeting. I believe they have to be out of sight, but I'd have to check with code enforcement to make sure. There is an option though, if you have space limitations in your garage, that's where the 65-gallon cart option comes into place to downsize on either the recycling or both the refuse and recycling cart. And again, it's unlimited service, so even if you have more than what fits in a 65-gallon, you can still put it out and it'll still be collected.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question is, just so I'm reading there's a lot of charts in the back up here, but current rates of what we're paying today for, as I mentioned, I'm a card customer, to the group, 5-year average, is looking like a savings of $6.50 a month. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, so the current cart rate is, sorry, make sure I'm looking at the right table, $22.95 a month for the 95-gallon toter. With the proposed Groot cart service, that price for year one would be $15.49 for the same 95-gallon cart. And the average price over the course of the 5-year agreement is would be about $16.44. So it is a savings across each of the 5 years from the current cost.
Right. Okay. And I would think that the majority of customers are going to fall in that that area, and constituents who have reached out had the concern about the maybe not having 4 stickers per month. But going with a sticker-based program, you're going to incur a monthly charge, so it's going to pretty much even out anyway. So I think I support this recommendation for option 1. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Widener.
Thank you. Christina, you did a great job with this, figuring out all the ins and outs and pulling together all the different considerations for us to look at. When you're done with this, if you could help me with bundling my home owner's insurance and my car insurance, I think I could use your help with that. But that aside, is there any way that we can get away from the stickers completely?
Well, in theory, there is. You could encourage people to go through the yard waste toter. I will say, I think we would have to evaluate the cost impacts and the sort of the benefit, do kind of a cost benefit analysis on pushing toters across the board. The benefit, I think, on the yard waste is that is something that varies heavily from one property and one resident to the next. For example, if you have a smaller lot, no mature trees, don't have a ton of gardening and plants going on, to pay for a subscription service on the yard waste when you are likely not putting out a whole lot of yard waste throughout the season is probably cost prohibitive. Whereas if you have a lot of mature trees, you've got a lot of planting and gardening, the cart service is potentially more cost effective for you because it's more unlimited and you have the option to put out as much as you need every week over the course of the season. So without doing a real cost benefit analysis, I'd be hesitant to encourage a full-blown yard waste cart subscription because I don't know that would meet everyone's needs just on a cost basis.
Thank you. I agree with the recommendation for option 1. I just like the idea that we're trying to be green and incentivize recycling and composting and all those good things. And there's a real hidden cost, I think, with the stickers when we start looking at the driving time to go and buy them, and then the staff time to collect the dollars selling them, and the cost involved with issuing them. So I don't know, I guess I just look forward to a day and a time and a place when we can go without the stickers. completely, because I think there's hidden costs all over the place with the sticker program. So, but thanks for all your work, and I think I really like the option 1 that you've come up with. Thanks.
And you did touch on something that I didn't cover before, which is if we move to a cart-based service, and this certainly isn't the leading factor in the decision, but there would be some likely staff time reduction in the selling of the stickers for finance staff, because obviously right now they are selling stickers on a regular basis. And if we move to cart-based with only yard waste stickers, it's less frequent purchasing of yard waste stickers. So that is an added savings, I suppose, in terms of staff time. And then the other thing I want to mention is I can't take all the credit for the tables and the charts because I got a lot of help from Kristen Youngmeyer. So I just want to make sure that she gets due credit for assisting with all of that as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. I guess that's it. That's all I had. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you. Alderman Wilson.
Well, all I can say is thank you for so much put into this. I think it was great to hear all the questions and the answers and the problems and the solutions. So thank you very, very much for what you've done for this. I too agree with your option and think it's good for us and good for the city. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I just have a
Alderman
couple.
Berry, this is Alderman Davalos. Can I ask one more question, or is there another time to do that?
No, go right ahead.
Just quickly, I would like to put my plug in to keep those stickers because I can't fit 3 of these bins in my garage. So I'd like the option to do that, and that's 1. 2, is there a lid on the landscape toter? Is it the same as the other ones? It looks the same?
Yes.
Okay. And if we went to your website, we'd be able to see all these different carts and things, right? Do you think? Okay, thank you. That's it.
Okay, I just have a couple questions myself. So on the 35 gallon, is that, I know there's no limit to the amount that you can put out on the 95 and the 65, but is there a limit on the 35? Is that one of the things, the reasons why it's the $35? It's only what fits in that bin, correct?
Correct.
Yes. Okay. Secondly, you for that amount of money, whatever the amount is that's been told to us, you get a bin for garbage and a bin for recycle. Now, is there a different? I get the bins from Groot, correct? Okay, so is there a charge for the bins when I get them?
The cart costs are included in that monthly rate, so there's no additional cost when we deliver cart.
Okay, and is there a different color for one versus the other?
Yeah, the recycle will have a different colored lid.
Just the lid will be a different color.
Correct.
And all the bins do have handles and wheels on them, correct?
Correct.
Okay, especially even the 35, because there's a lot of seniors who, that's the whole idea, is to be able to wheel it to the end of their driveway or out to the street, wherever.
That is correct.
Okay, those were all my questions. All right, anyone else have any questions before we have a motion?
Alderman Berry, can I just add one more thing?
Go right ahead.
And Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, but in addition to the general website that Groot offers, there is going to be a City of Warrenville specific site that has program information, and that would also offer us another opportunity to promote recycling and encourage correct and proper recycling.
Yeah, so correct. So it's a good point. On our website, we have individual pages dedicated to all of our municipalities that we have a franchise agreement with. So yeah, we would have a specific City of Warrenville page that outlines your program specifically and the program options, numbers they need to call, stickers where they're available. All that would be a subsection or subpage in our website, correct?
Thank you. And we will continue to post recycling information. In fact, I believe the February newsletter had an updated graphic with what you can and can't recycle. So we do post that information in the newsletter on a fairly regular basis, and we try to put out information on social media and on the city website. So we would continue to do that regardless of which program we offer to encourage recycling. and proper recycling.
Mhm.
Okay, that's
Okay.
it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. We need a motion. Someone?
This is Alderman Davalos. I'd like to recommend City Council pass a resolution approving a franchise agreement with Groot for residential waste and recycling collection and disposal services to begin May 1st, 2021.
Second, Alderman Krischel.
We have a motion by Alderman Davalos and a second by Alderman Krischel. If the clerk would read the roll, please.
Alderman Berry,
Aye.
Alderman Weidner,
Aye.
Alderman Krischel,
Aye.
Alderman Wilson,
Aye.
Alderman Ashaw, Alderman Goodman,
Aye.
Alderman Anderson,
Aye.
Alderman Davalos.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, could I have a comment, please?
Yes, sir.
Just for Josh, please, I guess, encourage people to get an appropriately sized cart so that we don't have a lot of stuff sitting around the carts. I mean, I appreciate your flexibility in taking a little bit more than what goes in the cart, but it would be nice, again, for the appearance of the city and for your business too, if we didn't have a lot of stuff stacked near the cans all the time. It would be a whole lot better if the recycling and the trash was able to fit in the cart that the person was using. So if some way we can encourage people to appropriately size their cart, I would appreciate it.
No, it's a good point. And I think if I've learned anything from your staff's approach, they're nothing but thorough. So I'm sure there's going to be a good partnership there and communication before the program starts. So we'll definitely take that under advisement and make sure we're communicating that. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Josh, for being here and answering all our questions.
Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. All right, on to number 4, update on Rogers Avenue land sale. This would be management analyst Kristen Youngmeyer.
Thank you. Good evening. The sale of city-owned real estate on Rogers Avenue at this time has been postponed indefinitely. While the DuPage County Health Department has, this has been done while the DuPage County Health Department has time to conduct some research on neighboring properties regarding a health-related issue and provide any advice to the city related to that. We didn't want to sell while this work is happening. Once that research is completed, we do plan on listing this property again. Over the summer, there have been some inquiries asking when the Rogers Avenue property will go back on the market. So there is interest. When we do advertise for bids, we anticipate that there'll be a minimum bid amount required. If people have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Okay, I guess we'll go through the list. Mayor Brummel?
Questions? Thank you.
Okay, Alderman Anderson?
No questions.
Alderman Davalos?
No questions.
Alderman Goodman?
None for me.
Alderman Krischel?
No questions. Thank you.
Alderman Weidner?
No questions. Thank you for the update.
Alderman Wilson?
No comments.
Okay, and I have no questions or comments at this time. Okay, that was information only. Thank you, Kristen.
You're welcome.
Okay, number 5, consideration of bid letting and construction engineering for the 2021 construction projects prior to approval of the FY 2022 budget. That would be Public Works Director Phil Kukler.
Thank you. This is something we've done annually now at this meeting for a few years, and the staff has found over the years that it's beneficial to go out to bid as early in the year as possible before contractors have much of their work lined up, so we get favorable bid prices for the road program. So we typically go out to bid in February or March and then award the contract in March or April. And the contractor usually isn't starting until after the asphalt plants open up anyway. So they start in May or June, depending on their schedule. So it works out very well. The challenge is that we're going out to bid on a project before the budget's approved. So we want to make sure to get council's permission and authorization to advertise for bids before the budget's formally approved in April. This year, we're looking at, again, at a reduced road program, as I mentioned earlier in my budget presentation. It's going to be limited to Husky Highway, Riverside Avenue, Waverly Avenue, and Cancerra Village. So our cost estimate is around $750,000 for the project. That's what we're proposing in the budget. And with that, I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Okay. Mayor Brummel?
No questions. I'm in support of the staff recommendation. Thank you.
Alderman Anderson.
Yeah, this makes sense to do. I am curious, for my own knowledge, if we do this and let's say you come through the budget process, but then there's a change in plan and we don't decide to do one of these elements, what's the ultimate downside?
I would have before last year, I would have been surprised that would be an issue, but we had to deal with that last year. We opened bids and I think it was either late February, early March, and City Council actually approved the contract with Geneva Construction for something like $1.7 million. Pandemic hit, there's a stay-at-home order. City Administrator Coakley asked what we might be able to do to reduce costs in the project. So we went back to Geneva Construction before the contract documents were signed and worked out a change order where we pulled certain streets out of the project. Now, if it was just pulling out one street, that may not be as big of an issue, but we're trying to reduce the project by a third. That was a bigger issue where we definitely needed to work with Geneva Construction to make sure we were doing it in a way that they'd be okay with. We couldn't just unilaterally do that without their permission in that case. But there is some opportunity to work with the contractor depending on what changes would be required afterwards. So yeah, I was surprised. I never would have thought that would have happened, but the timing last year, we did experience it.
Yep, and there's still uncertainty for this year. So
absolutely.
But I'm supportive of this scope of work. Makes sense.
Thank you. Alderman Davalos?
No questions, thank you.
Alderman Goodman?
Thank you. So when we cut these exact streets out of the road program for 2020, it reduced the budgetary impact by about $600,000. I guess my question is just the difference. I don't think engineering costs are included in this $754,000. So you add that 77,578 to it, it's over 830,000. So I guess my question is just what's that difference?
So in every road program, we also include about $50,000 to $70,000 worth of citywide concrete and asphalt patching work. And that's to take care of when we have water main breaks, to repair all these isolated spots where we've had work done, or if there's some sidewalk trip hazards that were identified and things like that. So that part is included in that $750,000. There's also included in that total is that isn't necessarily part of the actual bid. Staff is going to be working on replacing streetlights out there as well that are due for replacement. So that's money that the city will spend out of the CMRP toward the project, but it's not going to be part of the actual bid in the project. And it's something we didn't spend last year either, but it wasn't part of the Geneva's construction contract, so it didn't get included with that $600,000 reduction.
Okay, was the engineering cost also saved last year?
Yes, yeah, the engineering costs, I don't remember the exact amount, but I think it probably went from something like roughly $90,000 down to some, $60,000 or $63,000 last year too.
Okay, so there's additional savings that we just weren't thinking about in the same bucket, and it all kind of has to be added back in this time. All right, that makes sense. Thanks for the clarification.
Welcome.
Okay, Alderman Chrisell?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, Alderman Widener?
No questions, thank you.
Alderman Wilson?
No questions. I agree with this proposal.
Okay, and I have no questions at this time either, and I also agree. So we need a motion, please.
Alderman Davalos, I would like to make a move to accept staff's recommendation and authorize staff to advertise for bids for the 2021 road program project prior to formal approval of the fiscal year 2022 budget.
Second, Alderman Wilson.
Okay, we have a motion by Alderman Davalos and a second by Alderman Wilson. Clerk, if you would please read roll call.
Alderman Critchell,
Aye.
Alderman Wilson,
Aye.
Alderman Anderson,
Aye.
Alderman Berry,
Aye.
Alderman Goodman,
Aye.
Alderman Davalos,
Aye.
Alderman Widener,
Aye.
and Alderman Ashar. Motion carries.
Okay. Motion carries. Very good. On to number 6. Consideration to order a street sweeper prior to approval of the FY 2022 budget. That would be Public Works Director Kukler.
Thank you. And similar to the road program, we're asking, this is not a normal request because we normally wait to purchase the equipment or vehicles until the fiscal year starts, but there's a longer lead time on a street sweeper. So we're looking, in order to have it for spring, we are trying to work through this now and get permission to place the order. The existing street sweeper was proposed for replacement in the current fiscal year 21 budget, which was delayed among other purchases due to the pandemic. Street sweeper is the only piece of equipment or vehicle that Public Works is proposing to replace in fiscal year 22. We have an estimate from the vendor that it requires about $6,500 in repairs to make it sort of work for the beginning of the spring season here. And before we spend that money, we want to we explored the idea of trying to purchase a new one. And what we were proposing is to trade in this existing street sweeper on the new street sweeper, which would result in a net cost of like $207,000 and some change. As we talked about this during our department budget meeting with City Administrator Coakley and Finance Director Dahlstrand, they asked staff to look at a more creative way to try to approach this. So we went back to the vendor and asked for about financing over a 5-year period. The total financing charges or interest that we would pay to do that would be about roughly $17,000. There's no penalty to pay this off early. We would have the option to either make the payments early in the year, or early in the 1 year, each year, or make them later in the year. And so what staff is recommending is financing this for a 5-year period, making the payments later in the year. It would be a year. The payment would be due a year after the first payment would be due a year after the lease agreement is executed. And anyway, so we would recommend doing that. So the payment would be due, say, roughly a year from now, next spring. If city finances are looking better at that point, I would recommend paying the whole thing off at that point, so you minimize the interest charges. We could look at that every year. If it's not good in a year, then in 2 years we could look at that, paying it off and still minimizing the interest charges on it. The total interest charges just over 2 years are roughly the equivalent of paying the $6,500 now for repairs. And our experience with the street sweeper, it's hit its useful life. There have been, in the last couple of years, repairs that total $5,000 to $10,000 each year. We're looking at $6,500 at the start of this year. I would not be shocked to see the street sweeper go down during the course of the year because something else goes wrong. It's getting old. So that's the reasoning why we're proposing to go this way. I would be happy to entertain any questions on this at this point.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go for questions and comments. Mayor Brummel.
Thank you. No questions. I'm good with the staff recommendation.
Okay, Alderman Anderson.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear what my fellow aldermen, if they have any comments on this. There's a part of me that's somewhat risk averse and just, the 6,500 to get us into this year so that we actually understand how things are playing out. Because the 17,000 in finance costs, which we could end up having to pay, is certainly more than we'd like to pay. And course, we'd like to pay it off early. We just don't know if we're going to be in the situation to do that. So I don't have enough history to know how that'll likely play out. So I'll hold judgment at this time and listen to my peers.
Thank you. Alderman Davalos?
Thank you. So if there was no pandemic, this would just be a debit to the CMRP, right? Just the full 200,000, 207,000 or whatever we would just pay it out, right?
Yes, and if there was no pandemic, it would have been done during the current fiscal year.
Right. I also I wonder about the 17,000. I guess my problem is just, you know, I always advertise, you know, we have no debt to the general fund. And I know it's not a debt to the general fund. I guess it's a debt to the CMRP. And I believe we will pay it off early, actually. But I guess I don't have the CMRP figures right in front of me. I just wonder if there's any, I don't even know how much is in there. I should, I suppose. But I know we'll have it at the budget. So I just wonder if we can't just pay it. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not staff, and I know you guys have probably gone over this many times. I just feel I don't have enough information to actually say how I would want to do it because I'm so averse to the interest. Is there any more information on that, or would we just decimate the CMRP at this point because it doesn't get all of its money in, obviously?
Alderman or Administrator Coakley has a comment.
Yeah, if I could chime in on that. This is the CMRP is something, number one, that Alderman Widener and Kreschel and Phil and I and Kevin are working hard on look at the future. We started that before the pandemic hit. That was something on our agenda for this current year to work on. And then, of course, the bottom fell out of the local, regional, national, world, universal economy because of the pandemic. No, there isn't enough money to do that outright purchase unless we want to make drastic cuts to the next couple of years. Some of the major funding sources in the, and you'll be getting all this detail, and of course you don't have that information yet. It is being looked at more by the long range financial planning group on one side and mostly the CMRP group, work group on the other, but you will get that. But some of the major reductions in revenues this year that have been affected by the pandemic are affecting the CMRP. General fund also, but that's such a much larger entity. That's why we've been reducing road projects. And you want to think about it, not just what we're spending year to year in the snapshot of 21 or 22. That has to be a self-sustaining fund, or that's intended to be ongoing forever. And as Phil was commenting earlier, we are delaying many projects and purchases which will catch up with us. We're pushing them out knowing that things will get somewhat better, but there's going to have to be a review of expenses and revenues in that fund going forward, and determining what we can and what we want to as a community, and the council, of course, wants to be able to do as a level of service. We were doing really well in that fund and just needed to make a few adjustments for future inflation until the pandemic. And of course, we have to look at the impacts of the loss of revenue right now. We're trying to project as best we can going forward in the future, but some may not recover the same in that fund. We're doing all that analysis right now. One last comment is I want to be careful. I would not characterize the lease purchase agreement of the sweeper as going into debt or borrowing in the same sense. It's similar to leasing a vehicle for, you may purchase it later instead of buying the car outright. Sometimes that works better for people for one reason or another. If that's your own personal finances, the city, the lease purchase arrangement is something we're looking at as favorable right now because of the cash. At least there's a cash flow issue. We don't have enough to put it out and purchase it in 1 year and be able to continue with a reasonable road program for the next couple of years until things recover. I hope that helps with some of the discussion. And remember too that, I'm sorry, you'll be getting a lot more details on March 1st when the budget goes out, and then we'll have a lot of discussion during the month of March about those revenues and expenses in total.
So I'm assuming you guys have plowed through everything to find another way to like lease it from ourselves or something. I mean, I know the answer to this already because we talk about this every city council. Okay. I guess I'm reluctant, but I suppose this is part of the new ball game. Okay, thanks.
Alderman Goodman?
Yes, Alderman Davalos already asked one of my main questions, which was why weren't we provided with more information in the backup about the financial condition of the CMRP before being asked to not use the CMRP to fund something that normally we would use the CMRP to fund. I would love to see, you know, a little bit of that if you have that information available, saying, no, we don't have this money in the backup when this comes back next week. If you can prepare that in time, that would be helpful to me. However, I will say that the one thing that reconciles me to the staff recommendation is the incredibly low cost of financing right now. I did a calculation of if we just had, you know, paid off after 2 years, and my initial rough estimate is that it would cost us $6,825.60, not the full $17,000, and that is very comparable to the $6,500 that you're talking about in repairs. So, you know, I think $300, give or take, is not a tremendous cost to have a vehicle that's in good repair when we need it, especially if there might be future costly repairs this year that we don't anticipate right now. So I agree with the staff recommendation under the circumstances, but I do agree with Alderman Davalos that I'd like to see a little bit more financial information to back up these kinds of requests, especially when staff is asking us to do these kinds of unprecedented things. I think that would be very helpful. And I'd like to see that by next week if you can get that together.
I'll work with Finance Director Dahlstrand and City Administrator Coakley to see what we can provide.
I mean,
David.
just a couple of bottom line numbers. I'm not talking about a great level of detail, but just a couple of bottom line numbers. I think, you know, when Administrator Coakley mentions that there's oversight of this at the moment by the Long Range Financial Planning Work Group, that's not correct. We haven't looked at the capital maintenance fund at all. We've been focused on the hotel fund thus far, and I haven't seen any of these numbers recently. So that would help me make my decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Kerschel?
No, I agree with the recommendation. I would also add, as Alderman Goodman mentioned, the 6,500. That's to, you know, as it is today, right? One more repair and you're well above that. So I think it makes sense to get something in good operating condition. Thank you.
Alderman Widener?
Yeah, thank you. I don't know much about the street sweeping program for the city. Like, how many total hours is the street sweeper utilized, and what year was it purchased?
I would have to work with staff to figure out how many total hours. Then Kristen's has tracked, or has the staff tracking their hours and what they work on. So I could probably get that number for next week in terms of how many total hours. The year it was purchased, I could probably look up pretty quickly here. I don't know off the top of my head.
Didn't we?
The CMRP.
And the repairs, when were they? What did they include? What was done to the street sweeper?
In the past?
Yeah, the repairs that were done, the expensive repairs.
It varies. I mean, we have for a while, because the hardness of the city's water, that was causing some issues with the water components of the street sweeper, and so we had those repaired a few years ago. We also have since added a water softener here to have better, softer water to be able to go to the street sweeper, so we don't have those same issues. I don't recall specifically what the repairs were done the last couple of years, and I do have an invoice or a quote for what the $6,500 includes, but I was going to look up the life cycle for this one quick in the EMRP. Street sweeper. If I can find it. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to scan through this quick. Here it is. It was purchased in 2009, fiscal year 2009. So it was probably purchased in calendar year 2008.
Yeah, I'd be interested in kind of knowing, you know, the ins and outs of the street sweeping program, and if there's any way we can defer the maintenance and possibly even the purchase until the CMRP picture is made clearer. This is I think an expensive cost, and until we know exactly what the CMRP is, you know, the picture is, because there's going to be a whole lot of tough choices, I think, with the diminishing of the CMRP funds, and if there's any way to, you know, postpone this for a year. I don't know whether we've, you know, be able to cooperate with another municipality that might have one, or, you know, somehow get through with the, you know, expensive repairs that we've done in the last year, and, you know, with baling twine, you know, kind of keep this together for another year. I think I'd be in favor of that until we get a clearer financial picture. That's just my thoughts on it, but I'd be interested in knowing more if you can get those answers for next week.
Sure.
Thanks.
Okay, Alderman Wilson?
Yeah, I'd just like to know, if we spend $6,500, how long would that sweeper last?
I can't predict that.
I understand.
Yeah,
But my point,
yeah.
yeah, my point is, you know, I appreciate it. It's just a fixed situation. But $6,500, if we can make it last another year and a half or a year versus $44,900, I just wonder, until our funds get better. And didn't we at one time hire this out, lease one, to do the sweep before we bought the sweeper?
I would have to
Can
look
we
into
rent
that.
it?
I do know that from talking to Jamie Clark that the rental fleet is not really of good quality. So it's one thing to have to rent one for a short period of time while you're fixing one, which is an expense involved in renting one too. But the quality of the equipment that is available for rental is not very good. As far as predicting, I mean, $6,500 might take us through a year and a half, or it might take us through 2 months. Given the age of the sweeper, I can't predict, and given the fact that we've had several repairs on in the last few years, it would seem likely that it wouldn't take us through. It wouldn't last a year and a half.
Now, I understand. I anticipated your answer, but I just thought I'd throw it out there, you know, rather than doing it. So yeah, it would be nice if we could build up our reserves and our funds so that we could go ahead and make it. I still think in the long run, we need to do it. So my suggestion would be go ahead and go with the recommendation and do the purchase and get us a sweeper that works. So I'm in favor of the suggestion that you've made.
Thank you. The only thing I can remember is I think we used to rent a service that would come and clean the streets. Not that we would actually rent the machine, but there was a service that would come and do that. So that would be probably fairly expensive, I would think. And I think that's the reason we actually bought the street sweeper ourselves in the first place in 2009. Actually, I don't see putting the $6,500 in for repairs at the moment. If it's really not going to be some kind of a guarantee that it'll run for at least 6 months. So I think right now I would probably go with the purchase, and then basically it's almost like the leasing option. Okay, we need a motion.
Alderman Goodman, I would like to make a motion to recommend that the City Council pass a resolution waiving competitive bidding and approving the purchase of a new street sweeper.
Second, Alderman Davalos.
We have a motion by Alderman Goodman and a second by Alderman Davalos. Clerk, would you please read the roll call?
Alderman Ashar. Alderman Goodman.
Aye.
Alderman Widener.
Show me voting no until there's more information.
Alderman Anderson.
I'm a no at this time.
Alderman Wilson.
Aye.
Alderman Berry.
Aye.
Alderman Davalos.
Aye.
Alderman Chrisell.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Motion carries. Okay, on to number 7. Consideration of a resolution waiving competitive bidding and approving a contract to replace a motor at well number 10. Public Works Director Kugler.
Thank you. As you may have noted in the weekly report the last couple of weeks, the motor at well number 10 on Batavia Road failed about 2 weeks ago and needs to be replaced. There are 2 vendors in this area who perform this work, and staff obtained proposals from both of them. The city's used both vendors in the past, and both are well qualified and have performed well on past projects for the city. Staff's recommending approving the contract with Waterwell Solutions since they provided the lower price at $35,645.50. Since the contract does exceed staff spending authority of $25,000, and staff did not advertise for bids, we're recommending City Council waive competitive bidding and approve the contract with Waterwell Solutions. I'd just like to add, this is something that happens periodically. There's certain vendors for some of our equipment and that are just, there's a limitation. Sometimes it's a sole source purchase on some of our sanitary sewer lift station equipment where there's only one to get the equipment we want, there's only one place that supplies it. In this case, there are 2 vendors that provide the service in this area. And we did reach out to both of them. So I wouldn't expect that if there was if we did go out and advertise for bids, I wouldn't expect that we would get any more than these 2 bids from these 2 vendors. And there is a time element involved in this too, so we would like to get well number 10 back up and running. So with that, I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you. Mayor Brummel?
Thank you. And as Phil alluded, these things happen. They're unexpected. They're unfortunate. But my understanding from the backup is that there's savings in another area that will cover this cost. Is that correct, Phil?
Yeah, we saved on that. And if you recall my budget presentation, there was a decision package in this year's budget for, it was $75,000 for the water, the risk and resilience assessment, and the update to the emergency response plan. And that because staff was able to draft some of that on our own without the assistance, or without having to rely entirely on a engineering consultant, that there was a savings there.
And this is clearly a vital piece of equipment. We can't let it just sit idle, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I'm ready to support the staff recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Anderson?
No questions, I'm in support.
Alderman Davalos?
No questions, thanks.
Alderman Goodman?
Nothing from me.
Alderman Chrisell?
No questions.
Alderman Widener?
No questions, thank you.
Alderman Wilson?
No questions.
And I have no questions either. I'm looking for a motion, please.
Alderman Davalos, I move to recommend City Council pass a resolution waiving competitive bidding and awarding a contract to Waterwell Solutions in the amount of $35,645.50 to replace a motor at well number 10 on Batavia Road.
Second, Alderman Wilson.
We have a motion by Alderman Davalos and a second by Alderman Wilson. Clerk, would you please read the roll call, please?
Alderman Berry.
Aye.
Alderman Goodman.
Aye.
Alderman Widener.
Aye.
Alderman Chrisell.
Aye.
Alderman Anderson.
Aye.
Alderman Davalos.
Aye.
Alderman Ashnauer, Alderman Wilson.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion passes. Okay, on to number 8, consideration of a request to dispose of surplus city property. Management Analyst, Kristen Youngmeyer.
Great, thank you. The police department and public works staff have identified items that are no longer being utilized or have been replaced. In your council packet, there is a list of these items that they're looking to sell. The majority they are looking to sell through the Ovenhoff auction services. All the items except for police uniforms that are worn and torn, which they're planning to dispose of properly, obviously not donate. If anybody has questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Okay. Mayor Brummel, questions?
Questions? This is something we do on a regular basis, so let's do it.
Okay. Alderman Anderson,
No questions.
Alderman Davalos,
No questions. Do you think we could use the money to buy a street sweeper? Just kidding.
I'll try to put in a fancy description. Okay.
Thank you.
give me a broom. No. Alderman Goodman.
For the bag of uniforms, is there a fabric recycling option to take textiles out of the landfill?
Not that I'm aware of, but since they're police uniforms, I think they have a process where they dispose of them, making sure they're, not going into the hands of the public. I could look into that for you.
It's just a query. We've had people come and ask to install fabric recycling bins here in Warrenville, so I know fabric recycling is pretty common.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you.
Alderman Kershaw,
Nothing for me. Thank you.
Alderman Widener. Alderman Widener. Oh.
I'm sorry, no questions, thank you.
Alderman Wilson.
No comments.
Okay, I have no comments either. We need a motion, please.
I recommend,
No, that's fine. Go ahead, Alderman Wilson.
that's all right. I recommend City Council approving an ordinance authorizing disposal of city-owned surplus property utilizing Obenhoff auction service.
Second, Alderman Davalos.
Okay, we have a motion by Alderman Wilson and a second by Alderman Davalos. Clerk, to read the roll call, please.
Alderman Davalos,
Aye.
Alderman Ashnauer, Alderman Kershaw,
Aye.
Alderman Widener,
Aye.
Alderman Wilson,
Aye.
Alderman Berry,
Aye.
Alderman Goodman,
Aye.
Alderman Anderson.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Number 9, discussion of the FY 2022 citywide work plan. This is information only, and it will be presented by City Administrator Coakley.
Thank you. This is the item that we have been putting on every committee agenda for the last month or so, just to make sure that we keep on track, keep you updated on any changes, and answer any questions that you have. So I'll stop at that point and see if there's questions. Thank you.
Mayor Brummel.
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
Alderman Anderson.
Yeah, Mr. Coakley, I was just curious, if I'm looking at this is the 2022 draft one, correct? And just, are the completion dates updated, or just to focus on the project and activity? This was some of the fall 2020 that didn't feel quite right. Am I looking at the wrong version?
Could you repeat the question, please?
I guess the one I was looking at labeled FY 2022, several of the tier item 1 items had fall 2020 expected completion dates. Am I looking at the wrong?
You're fine.
You want me to tell him? Assistant City Administrator White.
Thank you. The version in the packet should say it was last revised by me on January 12th, 2021, and that one includes updated dates that are a month and a year.
Okay. I must be looking at the wrong one. But okay, no other questions.
Okay, Alderman Davalos.
No questions, but I sort of agree with Alderman Anderson on my copy, at least in the packet. A lot of those dates look like the fall of 2020. So it's fine because I agree with all the other stuff. So I'm fine.
Okay. Yep, Christine is going to put it up on the screen and share the document that we have. I think some of you may have skipped to item F10 with the current year's updates, at least the version we're looking at.
Yes.
Yeah, in my packet, at the back of the packet labeled F9, it looks, this is the version that Christina was just referring to, and that looks correct. Originally, I was on F2, which had the prior dates.
Yes. Yes, F9 is the correct one that you should be looking at. It's up on the screen. Yeah, it's 5 minutes to 10. No wonder we can't see. Okay. So Alderman Anderson, you had your question answered?
Yes, thank you.
And then Alderman Davalos, you had your question answered or no?
I'm good. I'm good.
Okay. Alderman Goodman?
I think Alderman Anderson is correct that F2 needs to be corrected. So that's a comment for Phil. But other than that, no comments. Thank you.
F2 is Public Works.
Right, and it is incorrect, and now Phil knows to correct it, and that's fine. So we're good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Alderman Krischel?
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Widener?
No comments. Thank you.
Alderman Wilson?
No comment.
Okay, and I have no comments or questions either. So thank you very much. Okay, we're on to the final, I think it's the final, isn't it? Yes. Our final one, number 10, review and file Public Works Department FY 2021 work program and decision package status report. Who's FY1? No, information purposes only. I don't know who's doing that, just whoever's FY1.
No, just for your information, FYI.
Okay.
If there are any, there's no presentation. If there are any comments or questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay. Mayor Brummel?
I'm good for tonight. Thank you.
Okay, Alderman Anderson.
I'm good for tonight too.
Okay, Davalos, Mr. Alderman.
I am also good for tonight.
Okay, and Alderman Goodman.
Just one minor thing, which is, are the high-speed garage doors of the Public Works garage still going to be in Tier 2 next year?
They will not.
Okay. That was a pretty expensive thing. Okay, that's all I've got. Thank you.
I have to say that we had high-speed garage doors on our budget at work. They were also canceled. No one can afford them this year. Alderman Krischel?
I have nothing. Thank you.
Alderman Widener?
Just wanted to note that there's nothing on the agenda tonight from the Community and Economic Development Department. So you've set a record all on your own.
Yep, thank you. But we did have administration. They kind of, took over at the beginning of the meeting. Alderman Wilson?
Nothing. Great night. Good night.
Okay. Thank you, Alderman Wilson. Okay, that was information only, right? No more comments, no more questions, correct? Good. We need one more, we have nothing under miscellaneous and we only need one more motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn by Alderman Krischel and a second by Alderman Goodman. Clerk, if you could please read the roll call.
Alderman Anderson.
I headed out to plow.
Alderman Ashar.
I'm sorry.
Alderman Berry.
Aye.
Alderman Davalos.
Aye.
Alderman Goodman.
Aye.
Alderman Krischel.
Aye.
Alderman Widener.
Aye.
Alderman Wilson.
Aye.
Motion carried.
We're officially adjourned. And we did it right before 10 o'clock. Oh, just turned 10 o'clock. Perfect. We are
Great
good.
job, everyone. Great
Have
job.
a great evening, whatever's left.
Good night.
Good night.
Can I ask Phil a question real